I don't know what that's going to.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Sherman. I'm the chair of Advisory Neighborhood Commission 1A, and I am calling this meeting to order. It is June 18th. This is our June public meeting. This meeting was noticed via listserv and on our website and on our X account. Welcome to the meeting. It is a little bit warm in here, so we have the fan turned on. For folks in person, hopefully you can hear us clearly. For folks online, hopefully you can hear us clearly. If you cannot at any point, I know we have Commissioner Davidson virtually, so keep us honest with being able to hear everything clear. Fantastic. Reminder to everyone, we have a lot to cover tonight, and I just want everyone to remain respectful and be cognizant of your time limits so that we can keep the meeting moving properly. All right, let's get into it. We'll move into our agenda. Secretary Easley did drop the agenda in the chat for those joining us online. I see we have just over 10 folks joining us virtually, so thanks for being here and those in person. Let's go ahead, Secretary Easley, with roll call and determination of quorum.
Commissioner Achenbach. Present. Commissioner Bhatia.
Present.
Commissioner Davidson.
Present.
Commissioner Davidson.
Can you hear us?
Present.
Uh-oh.
Present.
She can hear us, but we can't hear her.
Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear us? Okay, marked as present. Commissioner Easley, I am here. Commissioner Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Morales. I literally just saw him run out the door. We will be back. Commissioner Perry.
Present.
Commissioner Thomas Davis.
Present.
Commissioner Sherman.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And we have a vacancy in
SMD 1A09.
Okay, great. Just clarify. All right, proceeding. We're going to move into approval of the agenda. Commissioners, please take a look at the agenda. And are there any edits or additions or changes to the agenda? Yeah.
I'm going to add an emergency measure, which I circulated to members that I circulated at 2:09 p.m. It's a resolution concerning the protests of Gourmet Pizza LLC doing business as Red Rocks.
Okay, it has been added under the last item under new business. Thank you. Any other edits to the agenda? Nothing? Going once, going twice? Okay, there's no dissent. The agenda is approved and we will keep going. Moving into the reading and approval of our prior minutes. You can, those online, I know we don't have them in person here, but those are listed in our electronic version. And I do see a question in our Q&A. The agenda is not publicly available, login required. So Commissioner Easley, can you make sure to address that? Great. Is there a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from our May 21st meeting?
So moved.
So moved. Is there any dissent? Seeing none, the minutes from our May 21st meeting are approved. And we'll proceed. All right, chugging right along to report of officers. Commissioner Easley, go ahead with the secretary's report.
Every resolution that and letter we sent in May was responded to from the relevant agency. So I have nothing to report on that matter. Commissioner Morales, just so you're aware, every resolution and letter that we sent in our May meeting has gotten a response, including from the chief herself, the resolution that you drafted regarding the murder of Karen Pittman Brown.
Are you allowed to share what you said?
She said received.
Of course. How would she respond?
And I also want to give a shout out to Anthony Robertson, who is in our meeting currently, for helping me with an issue I mentioned earlier, which is the lack of response from the Department of Public Works regarding the resolution we transmitted to them in March regarding the reinstallation of 2 trash cans in my SMD. I got a response from several employees after you intervened, so I wanted to thank you for that. Beyond that, nothing further.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner Easley, if I'm not mistaken, a few of the measures that we passed have actually reached their 60 days statutory deadline. So reports are due from agencies with responses concerning those measures. Have those been received?
As of, I remember checking this in April, and I'll need to see again if there was any others that shifted. Let me get back to you on that.
Okay, any other questions?
One quick thing. You mean about the formal response that they're required in the 60-day period, not the received language? Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for Secretary Easley? All right, thank you. Moving on to the Treasurer's report. Treasurer Morales.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to report that we are still in good financial standing. We currently have
It was working with me.
We currently have $53,210.84 in the bank. All these sort of major transactions have been paying for the hybrid equipment that we're using today. That is how we're being refunded by the district government. So that's kind of just a formality. Also, some of the grand payouts for our Pride events from this past month. Happy to take any questions, but I think that pretty much covers it.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Thank you for the reports of officers. We'll move now into general speeches and any public comments. This is a time for members of the public, commissioners as well, to make general speeches, announce things that are happening, comment on things the ANC is working on, not working on. This is an opportunity for that open conversation. So we're going to limit it to 1 minute per speaker. We'll start with commissioners and then open up to the public. So let's start with Commissioner Davidson online. Let's make sure we can hear you as well.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Amazing. So I can share, but I also maybe wanted to hand it off to Commissioner Miller. We had Commissioner Miller really led the efforts to respond to a notice of intent from DDOT maybe a couple months ago about a traffic change that we determined to not be safe, not be efficient for the district, and we got a response that they listened to us and we're not going to implement the change. And I just think it's really important to recognize when things happen and our efforts are recognized and responded to and listened to. Things are often very slow moving and we don't often see the change that we want. And so I think it's really important to take a moment to acknowledge when that does happen. There was a lot of work that did go into that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge Commissioner Miller for leading that effort. And thank you for looking out for your constituents, for our constituents and our residents. Yeah, I think our residents deserve to hear when things go well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Commissioner Miller.
So I just wanted to, I don't know how to turn this
Just
on.
it's on.
Oh, it is?
Just get close to it.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Davidson. I do really appreciate that. And I do think sometimes oftentimes, when we get the win, we're so grateful we move on to the next fight or challenge that we're trying to do for our neighbors. I did also want to acknowledge my community and my neighbors who also gathered themselves, created a petition, and also helped push through that decision. And, you know, we sitting up here at the dais actually represent 2,000 people each. And so when these challenges come to us, we have to remember that acting alone is not always the best path forward. So thank you, Commissioner, for that. I did want to make a quick comment that today is the last day for DC Public Schools. Our students are now free for the summer with the exception of summer school programs.
Yes. This is the last day?
Today is the last day? Yes. Is it?
It is, I was just giving.
Okay, don't do that to me, sir.
This is my last day too. I'm not a student. though.
So congratulations to our teachers, to our staff, to our educators, to our students. But I also wanted to point out, and I think it's especially important now that we're going through the mayor's budget, that none of our out of school time or DPR, the Department of Parks and Recs programs, were cut. So if you have a student, if you have a young person who is looking for something to do, I am happy to connect anyone with any of these opportunities because there are still quite a bit out there. And I think we want to be able to see our young people engaged constructively. And so happy to help facilitate that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Miller. Are there other announcements from commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner Izzy.
ANC 1A is hiring. We are hiring an administrative assistant. I'm going to put a link to our application in the chat, and it's on our front page as well if you want further information. And I also have parliamentary inquiry for you.
Go ahead.
Can I speak to an item that's on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. And since we're not going to be able to speak on items during the consent agenda time, I wanted to just raise up an item that I was able to draft with the significant input from Commissioner Jessica Bhatia, a resolution recognizing the unique, vibrant LGBTQ, vibrant and loud LGBTQ history of Columbia Heights. Specifically recognizing businesses in our area, Nob Hill and Bob's Inn, both historic Black LGBTQ businesses that really were havens for queer joy and sanctuaries at a period of time when Black folks, gay folks weren't able to really find that many kinds of places. So I thought it was extremely important for us during Pride Month to remember our history and actually use this as an occasion to recognize those other businesses that are continuing that legacy of inclusivity in our area, including Wonderland Ballroom, Bloom Bars, and others. Just wanted to make sure that y'all didn't just skip through that, but you saw that we were doing that, and that's all.
Great, thank you.
No, that's it. That's it.
I don't know if my mic is working, is it? Oh, good, okay. Thank you, Commissioner Easley, appreciate that. Any other announcements from commissioners? All right, we'll open it up to the public. Again, these are 1-minute public comments. Anyone in the audience here, make sure you give us grab the mic, or online, you can also raise your hand and you'll be promoted to panelist if there's any public comments. Yeah, go ahead, Vita.
Good evening. My name is Vita Rangel. I'm a resident of 1810. Happy Pride Month and also happy Autistic Pride Day. I am here to encourage opposition to R2532, which is a resolution concerning the request to relocate the bus stop in the 3200 block of 11th Street. This item popped up on the agenda and the full text was not even available to the community until a couple of days ago, really a matter of hours for folks who are paying attention for it. And the resolution itself recognizes that 2 of the 3 bus routes that currently go through the bus stop on my block. It does not recognize H8 in addition to 63 and 64, which goes east to west. These 3 bus lines that currently go through the bus stop service 7 of the 10 ANC SMDs currently in the district. There are suggestions for where to move the southbound bus stop, but not the northbound bus stop on the line. And the community members and my neighbors that I've spoken to were unaware that this was being proposed. And a lot of folks use that bus line. And I think there's been inadequate opportunity for the public to engage with and provide meaningful input. The resolution itself encourages WMATA and DDOT to meaningfully engage the community. And I would encourage this commission to do the same and to vote down this resolution pending a public hearing or some other method in which community input can be solicited before encouraging official government action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Are there other public comments in the room? I see a hand online, but we'll do in person first. Okay, let's go to virtual. I see Richard Dubester, promote to panelist. Hi, Richard, you'll have 1 minute. Go ahead. You're muted right now.
Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, 2 issues. One, July 26th is the last day that anybody can have streeteries without legally complying with the regulations. And all the streeteries on 11th Street should come down because they aren't being used. They never were used. Second is the cannabis establishment on 3414 11th Street. The ownership, I've researched it pretty well, and it's nebulous. And they've done all the work they've done on the building with postcard permits, so they don't have to have inspectors. I know that the licensee, who I haven't yet conferred that their license is valid, has applied for other locations and has been rejected. So I've also heard that it's going to be connected. The top part of the building is going to be a juice shop, which sort of concerns me other than the hours. And it's only a block and a half from a public park that's mainly used for children.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dubester. Appreciate your comments. I'll just speak quickly since 3414 is in my single member district. We are in touch with the medical cannabis retailer who's applying for a license, and they will be coming to our ANC 1A Small Business and Economic Development Committee meeting next week on Monday at 7 p.m. via Zoom. So we're going to actually talk with the business owner, ask questions, learn more information. I invite you to come and learn more as well. I do understand that they will be operating on the second floor and a juice shop will be on the first floor. And the ANC is not weighing in on that medical cannabis application tonight. We will be looking at it at our July meeting. Thank you. Are there any other announcements from the public online? I'm sorry, Mr. Dubester, we have to move on. My apologies.
Asshole.
Any other online announcements? I don't see any. Okay.
Somebody put in I can read what they submitted. Karen Dow, I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly, said 3D MPD CAC Public Safety Leaders Community Meeting will take place on Thursday, June 26th at 7 p.m. at the 3rd District MPD station, and they will cover public safety concerns. And I can also put that in the Zoom chat for everyone to see.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Commissioner Davidson. And we do have Commander Connors from 3D who's speaking a bit later in our meeting. Okay, so with no other public comments, we're moving into our presentations for the evening. We have 3 big presentations. We're really honored to have these guests here with us. We have Councilmember Brianne Nadeau for Ward 1. We have Director Tiffany Crow of the Department of Licensing Consumer Protection, and we have Commander Sean Connors of MPD 3rd District. Given these are folks from the council and the executive, we're allocating 10 minutes for everyone's speech and then followed by question and answer. So thank you so much for being here for in person and for folks joining online who are listening in. Councilmember Nadeau, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Picking up?
Yeah, DeMonte, we good? It's picking up? Fantastic.
Great. Well, hello, commissioners. It's good to be with you again. Thank you for including me on the agenda tonight. I wanted to say a few words about the budget and some other legislation before the council right now. More broadly, it's obviously a very challenging budget year, and I feel like I say that every year, but this year we have, of course, federal action that is impacting our economy and our local funds. And so we are certainly trying to figure out how we can fill gaps. For me, that means we have to double down on a focus on childcare, high quality schools, public safety, affordable housing, and social services, and make sure that we're not shirking our responsibility to those or considering them anything other than also economic drivers for our community, because we know that things like child tax credit and good schools and safe communities do attract employers and create jobs in our community. They're not just things that make us feel good. I'm concerned about some significant cuts to programs in Ward 1, one of which is our highly effective substance use disorder services, including those here in Columbia Heights. They were zeroed out, not only the community navigator program run by District Bridges, but also the program at 7th and T run by HIPS. So I am working right now to put those funds back because we know we need those services on the ground in our community. They can't be ones that we only are able to call on through DBH and hope that they have time to get to us. We need them in our community every day, and establishing those relationships with residents so that they are ready to receive services and care. There's also a serious cut to violence prevention services, which obviously has a big impact on Columbia Heights. The violence prevention work, as you all know, commissioners, is about crew-based violence, which we have historically a significant amount of in Columbia Heights, a number of different crews over the history of our community, some of which are still very active. And the entire Cure the Streets team, which has been working very well and very hard in Ward 1, is being cut. It would no longer be offered by the Office of the Attorney General ahead of whatever may happen with the merger of the two programs. This was just chopped. So we're working to restore that. And I have concerns about the way that the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement is administering the program here in Ward 1 as well. We have a strong contractor, but some of the guidance they're receiving just doesn't make a ton of sense. Particular neighborhoods that they are suggesting need to be rounded on, et cetera. Neighborhoods that have never ever had crew violence. So we're working on that and just trying to make sure that that team has adequate resources to do the additional work. At the outset, it didn't include Parkview at all, which is very actively, it's a hot spot right now, but it's always been. So I'm on it, we're working on it, but I am gonna have to find the funding to restore Cure. And I believe we're trying to find funding to restore a contract for case management services, because it's one thing to get folks to put down the guns for a period of time, but it's another to say, now here's your next step in life. And if we wanna actually move forward rather than doing the same thing over and over again, we do have to have those services that had been offered in Ward 1 through a ones contract with Intercity Collaborative until very recently. So the clean teams were cut citywide. We know that in Columbia Heights, we desperately need our clean teams to be at full force, working together with colleagues to restore those citywide. And the clock got rolled back on some things that we had worked very hard on over the years. For example, the TANF policy that I worked on when I was chair of the Committee on Human Services has been completely reversed, basically putting us back in the 90s, which wasn't working for anybody. Adding penalties basically for being poor and not able to get up out of poverty on your own, which is not how we do things in the District of Columbia. And we also know, on top of that feeling really bad, it's not effective. So let's go with good policy and good sense, working with the new chair of the committee to reverse those cuts, similar to sorry, it's been a long day. Similar, the Alliance, the health benefit for our immigrant residents. We just spent the last 6 years fixing something that was done in the Gray administration so that everybody would have access to the Alliance, and the director of healthcare finance did exactly what he did then, which is say everybody has to come twice a year now in person to recertify for their benefits, which is just a way to get people off the rolls, because it's a very scary time for people who are eligible for Alliance to start showing up at the service centers and standing in line early in the morning waiting for it to open so that they can get their recertification done before they have to go to their work. And in the bad old days when we did this, there were lines around the block, and the service centers would cut off service at 10 a.m. because they were full for the day. It was not good for anybody receiving services at the service centers, let alone people on Alliance. So we are working to roll that back. It has a significant fiscal impact. And so it's going to be hard. A bright spot for Ward 1, the budget does maintain funding for parks projects throughout the wards, including several in Columbia Heights. A couple highlights for 1A specifically. The investments that it maintained are from the recommendations of the OP Public Life Study that I know this ANC worked very hard to contribute to. Tubman Elementary Schools, modernization is still underway. It's still on schedule. One big challenge is changes to the street vending law in the Budget Support Act. So there's a number of pieces of legislation in the Mayor's Budget Support Act that are not germane to the budget, and thus the goal for us is to strike them. It would include RFK Stadium. That would include the repeal of the Sanctuary Values Act. That would include the repeal of I-82. Those are the kinds of things that are in the budget right now that don't have a nexus with the budget, and therefore would be pretty easy for us to remove. I think we're there on a lot of those items. I think we still need to demonstrate to the chairman of the council that there is the political will to strike the I-82 repeal, and he needs to hear from council members. So as you advocate to other council members, make sure you're asking them to say to the chairman, I would like I-82's repeal to be struck from the VSA the way that I have. You don't have to ask me, I've already done that. We are working with the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection to make some important changes that they have asked for in order to get the vending zone up and running. We just do not agree with all the changes that are in the VSA, including essentially recriminalizing street vending, which I know this ANC worked very hard with me to decriminalize. I know we don't have a lot of time tonight, so I've jumped around a little bit to tighten this up, but I do want to note there will be a markup in the Committee on Housing on July 9th on the Rental Act, which is poised right now to gut the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, a law that's been on the books for 45 years in the District of Columbia, and is now at a time when other cities and states are trying to emulate that law because it's so important for tenants' rights. Our government is now considering essentially gutting it, essentially repealing it. So I am working with my colleagues on the Housing Committee. I do have a bill that would improve TOPA and address some of the concerns people have raised. It's not perfect. It's 45 years old. It's time to refresh. I get that. But exempting entire swaths of the city based on their income or the age of the building creates a two-tier system where some tenants have rights and some don't. It also seriously diminishes economic opportunity and upward mobility for tenants who are living in affordable properties already. They would not be able to come to the table and negotiate their rights. And that to me is really the antithesis of what we're trying to do in our district government. I'm gonna stop there because you may have questions and I can answer anything.
Thank you so much. Question. We'll go one round and then people have one question. We'll go a second round. Be cognizant of your time and how many questions you ask.
Hello? The light is misleading. Councilmember Deneau, thank you for coming. As always, a pleasure to hear your report and what you've been working on in regards to the budget. I have a couple of quick questions. One, I know other council members have already done like a community budget engagement forum or some sort, and maybe I've missed yours if you have done yours already, but I was just curious to know if your office was planning on doing one here in the ward to talk about the budget more in depth and ask any questions they might have. And then secondly, to the last point you raised about your own proposed legislation to fix housing in the District of Columbia, will we get a chance to, unless it's already out and I also missed it, will we get a chance to preview that legislation or look at it with you to see how we can work on helping you pass it or how we can make it better or anything like that? So just those are my two quick questions.
I've never done a budget forum before. It isn't something that I necessarily feel like would be super useful because I do try to spend a lot of time out in community during budget season listening. This year in particular, it's pretty condensed, so it would have been challenging to do it. But I am always open for people. I get multiple hundreds of emails a day on the budget, so I do think I hear from folks. It's certainly something we consider for next year, especially if other ANCs are interested in maybe co-convening. I'm open to it. One of the things that I took away from my first couple years as council member attending the mayor's budget forum is that it felt kind of frustrating because everybody's got a lot of ideas and I'm not going to be able to do all of them. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have the dialogue, but I've kind of always been like, ugh, are people just going to be frustrated because they asked me in person for this thing and there's no way I can do it? But that isn't necessarily a reason not to do it. It's just a reason that's held me back a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. You asked about the TOPA bill?
Yeah, you're
okay.
Version of it, yeah.
That one, yes, I introduced it a couple months ago. It is on limbs. It's called the Common Sense TOPA Reform Bill, if you want to look it up. And it essentially takes the study that we commissioned and takes all the recommendations and puts them into legislation to make TOPA more streamlined and accessible. Thank you for asking.
All right, thank you. I have Commissioner Perry, then Bhatia, Thomas Davis, myself, and Commissioner Davidson. So, Commissioner Perry, go ahead.
Could you say a little bit more about the discrepancies involved in OANC's handling specific neighborhoods and the funding allotted to them, and then also separately, would you mind offline about VIs?
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. You and I meant to connect by phone on the VIs. I actually don't know what you mean about the OANC. You want to tell me a little more and I can look into it?
ONS.
Oh, okay. I was like, what are they up to now? Hi, Commander. Yes. Okay. So a couple things.
Can you repeat the question into the mic? Some folks online couldn't hear it.
Yeah, I can reiterate
okay,
it if it's easy. Okay, so I had mentioned that the contract that came down from the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement to our vendor was a little strange. First, it didn't list Parkview as one of the neighborhoods that should be a target area. It was strange to me. There had just been 2 homicides in Parkview that were crew related. 2, it listed some neighborhoods that while I appreciate MPD gives them lots of love as needed. We all give them lots of love. They've never had crude violence. That would be Mount Pleasant. S Street was listed as a neighborhood. Pleasant Plains was listed as a neighborhood. All important neighborhoods that we all want to keep safe, but they don't have crew violence. And so when you're talking about where do you want to put resources, it's important in a contract that we're clear about this. Because if a contractor gets a contract and it says you must do, then they're going to do. So then I've got VIs running around neighborhoods that don't need to be when they should be up in one that they're desperately needed and that's not on the list. And the initial answer was, well, you can still do Parkview, it's just not on your list, which of course is not. There are 3 key neighborhoods that, and I don't love shouting them all out, but there are 3 key neighborhoods that are in active crew violence situations right now, and they all need dedicated resources from those teams. So one of them is in your ANC, one of them is in 1E, and one of them is in 1B. So, yeah.
Commissioner Bhatia.
Could you say a little bit more about your efforts on the sanctuary cities?
Yeah.
Conversations happening right now?
Yeah. So obviously the feds don't like sanctuary cities, and so they've already passed a law to repeal our law, which, you know, if that makes it through the Senate and gets signed by the president, then I think we're having a different conversation. The Budget Support Act measure would proactively repeal the Sanctuary Values Act, which directs district government not to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement entities and not to share information. So that has been the law of the land, honestly, since before we put it into law. It was policy. And it's feasible to believe that it could still be policy after the law is repealed, if it's repealed. But that deserves a more fulsome conversation and shouldn't just be tucked away in the budget. And there's no fiscal impact of it. Therefore, removing it from the budget is typically the course that we would follow just by striking it in the committee of the whole.
Commissioner Thomas Davis.
Thank you. I just want to start out by thanking you for a few things in my district. In particular, I do want to thank you. Though I know it's capital dollars, I want to thank you for protecting the funds for dog park at 11th and Park Road. Really looking forward to that project moving forward. And I do want to focus on a few things that I know is germane for Committee on Public Works and Operations, just to get a better understanding of what we can do there. Specifically on the mayor's proposed change to what you said, Clean Teams program. Can you talk a little bit about how you think she's maybe augmenting those funds through the Clean Corridors program that I believe DPW is looking to launch at the beginning of the fiscal year? And then specifically on just trying to make sure we're getting the right resources surged into the neighborhood. Is there any conversations you've been having about ways for us to secure a grant to facilitate the development of a safe commercial corridor hub somewhere, right? Because although those have the connotation about largely public safety focus, they are actually a resource hub that allows, you know, the mayor's office and various agencies to kind of come and do their own kind of community office hours. And so I think something like that in Columbia Heights would go a very long way. Finally, if you can just talk a little bit about why you think the vending change does not have a budget nexus. I think it's a direct budgetary impact. The council passed a Street Vendor Advancement Act that still, I believe, has some elements that are not funded, but I could be wrong there. So can you talk about why you think the mayor's proposed subtitle is not good enough? I agree, we don't want to recriminalize sidewalk vending or street vending, but I think some of the other elements of that subtitle is urgently needed. So if you are proposing to strike that, what is your timeline for making sure we can get some real solutions identified? Because I think you and I both know vending as it currently is putting a strain on the neighborhood and on our local business economy is severely suffering. And so we need to do something. So can you talk about what you're prepared to do if you do not advance the mayor's proposed subtitle?
Sure. So Clean Teams and Clean Corridors is very different. Clean Corridors is 15 corridors in the District of Columbia that enter and exit the district. So for example, in Ward 1, Georgia Avenue, which they go, you know, it's about getting at the impacts of commuters, basically. So they go all the way up to Eastern Avenue and they go down to Florida Avenue, which is Georgia Avenue, where it ends. But it's more like a blitz. So they bring everybody in, they clean the alleys, they clean the streets, they pick up trash. It's not a day-to-day thing. And it's, they've, as of this moment, still not ever conveyed what 15 corridors are included, despite having had a hearing on it yesterday. They told me Georgia Avenue, which was nice to know, but we don't know the rest. It also includes 295, 695, and one other thing, but it's not the same as Clean Team. I think we'll probably keep that program intact, TBD. The street vendors, we have agreed to work with DLCP on a number of common sense changes that they want to make, and we have already drafted that legislation. It's with CFO's office. We may decide to make some of those changes in the budget. We may try to move them under regular order, but it's a pretty substantial piece of legislation to move in the budget. They are changes that we've talked about from time to time, and I think this is unfortunately the second time that we've had a pretty good conversation and then they've just ended up in the BSA rather than coming down as regular legislation. And it's a pretty insane budget schedule. So moving substantial things in the BSA is difficult. So we'll see, but either way we've committed, I mean, we've talked about with colleagues, a standalone bill that we would move quickly. That, as far as I know, doesn't need any funding to be implemented. It's more about policy changes. So that's a priority for me because, as you know, the vending zone was an idea that I worked on with the community, and it hasn't been fully implemented. You know, and I don't really want to get into a whole fight about that while the director is sitting right next to me, because that'd be pretty rude. And we've already talked about it ad nauseum in our hearing last week. But you know, we all want to see the vending zone succeed and for the neighborhood to thrive with that. And there are a number of challenges. Some of them are the law, some of them are implementation, right? It all goes together. So we will work together and we will get it fixed. And we appreciated the testimony last week from ANC 1A from Commissioner Sherman. What was the middle question?
The Safe Commercial Corridor Grant, do you think that that's an opportunity for us to get some sort of resource here?
Maybe. The way it has been implemented in other places is sort of similar to what our community navigators do. So like Adams Morgan has one. They have 2 safety ambassadors. They're kind of like community navigators. So I don't know that it would get Columbia Heights a lot more than what we have, but Main Streets are eligible to apply. So by virtue of me having created the Main Streets, that is certainly something that we could look at. And the grant program exists still, and it is fully funded in FY26. So I think the question is whether everybody who's getting funding now is going to reapply or not, whether or not there'll be additional funds to apply for. The Main Streets also got cut, so we're going to have to wait and see who actually applies for Main Street grants again, right? We're going to try to replenish those, but it's a heavy lift if they weren't funded adequately to begin with. So.
Thank you. I have myself next on the list. Good segue to talk about Main Streets. Thank you, Councilman, for being here. Appreciate it. I know it's a difficult budget season, so thanks for everything you're doing and advocating for. Main Streets, I know, was cut. We've always had funding for one Main Street spread across 2 commercial corridors, so that cut will feel it even more. So, you know, I'm glad it's not cut completely, but that funding has been decreased from what I understand. So, trying to strategize of what other ways there are to support our small businesses, stimulate our local economy. Curious to get your thoughts on it, if any. And then also just to couple that with the Neighborhood Management Authority. And that's legislation that you introduced earlier this year. This commission did pass a resolution of support. I think there's been a bunch of neighbors that have been engaged on this recently. So I'm wondering if there's anything in the budget that can be done to like lay the groundwork for that is supplementing, you know, what other cuts might be happening so that we have some, you know, some support coming to small businesses, some support coming to the neighborhood, even that's just laying the groundwork. I don't know if that's, you know, the vacant retail provision that's in there, right? We have DC USA, which has so many vacancies, but they don't get the vacant property taxes because they're treated as one giant property, or the parking performance zones. I think that, I don't know what the things are, but,
great question.
And one last thing I'll just shove in there since it's my only time for questions. Public life study, you mentioned it. So glad to see some funding in there. Are we ever going to get it? That's the question.
Yeah, I'm going to be sending some stern letters as soon as we get through the budget. It's like a year overdue. I maybe just camp out in the city administrator's office till they release it. He loves when we do that. Okay, so yes, we are setting up the performance parking zone in this budget. So that we're hoping to get that off the ground now, which would fund the NMA. So we don't have to wait once that bill passes for that revenue to start. Thank you, everybody who has sent letters asking for the chairman of the business committee to hold a hearing. We appreciate it. We are keeping the pressure up as well on that. You know, I think I'm not quite ready to talk about this, but we are re-envisioning Main Streets a little bit and how they work in the District of Columbia. Notwithstanding the fact that we're trying to create 2 neighborhood management authorities, Main Streets can be really great tools when they're adequately funded because they support our small businesses with technical assistance and grants and things like that. And when you don't have a Main Street in your area, it's not eligible for all the same things, like very specific grants only for Main Street corridors here in the District of Columbia. So we are thinking about how to revamp that program a little bit in partnership with the business committee, and you can stay tuned for that because I know you'll be very interested in it.
Yeah. Can you just speak to any, like what specifically is being funded of the public life study? Like, are there, like, what should neighbors expect in the next year to see happen in our neighborhood?
It's a great question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that because yesterday was like 6 weeks long and I'm still like a little brain dead. So if you
No
don't
problem.
mind.
Thank you. Commissioner Davidson, and then I have Commissioner Miller.
Yes, thank you so much, Councilmember, for attending. Really appreciate your engagement always in your advocacy for 1A and Ward 1. And just for the residents on the call, my question, I want to give you guys a little bit of context about the mayor's budget that City Council is responding to. So because Congress kind of gutted in a sense DC's budget, the mayor is really trying to drive revenue with her budget, and so in doing so is really focusing on downtown and making downtown a space that other companies want to come to, so that revenue will come to DC. So a concern with that for me has been that a lot of the focus is on downtown, and so in looking at like DIMPED budget, for example, like business development has been cut by like 6.4 million, Great Streets has been cut. And I'm concerned that even if all of this money is coming into downtown, what is going to incentivize those businesses to expand into the rest of the city and want to invest if those areas are not, equally being invested in? And I feel like you've kind of already been touching on this, so it's things that you don't need to repeat yourself. But I did see that in the mayor's budget, there's almost 15 million set aside for sponsorships and incentives, which is like recruitment programs for businesses, attraction, retention. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to specifically within Columbia Heights that economic development piece and how we're going to ensure that the mayor's focus on that downtown revitalization is going to extend into Ward 1 and specifically into Columbia Heights.
It's a great question. It's something that I talk about with the mayor's team a lot, because when I think about the vibrancy of Ward 1 in our neighborhoods and all of the foot traffic and visitors that we attract, it really to me is a lesson in how do you sustain a commercial area. During COVID, people stayed in their neighborhoods and they patronized their neighborhood businesses, right? And we were still bumping, like, it was a hard time, but businesses in Columbia Heights and in Ward 1 benefited from that neighborhood-based loyalty. And Columbia Heights is still one of the most heavily trafficked areas in the entire city, but it's not really treated like an investment area. And that is one of the reasons why we're going to do this neighborhood management authority. We're going to bring our own investments in, and we're going to leverage the resources that we can from the people visiting our community by reinvesting parking revenue in the neighborhoods, which of course is an idea that was piloted downtown and in stadium districts, but really hasn't been adopted widely in any of the neighborhoods. And I think is a really big missed opportunity that we can leverage. The negative externalities. We love that people visit us, but we know they leave their trash and they leave their noise and all of that. And so let's at least take their parking revenue and reinvest it in the community. We are certainly going through that package that you mentioned. There are certain incentives in there that I personally, and there's data backing me up on this, don't think really are incentives. So for example, the qualified high-tech tax credit for tech companies is meant to attract tech companies to come to the District of Columbia. When it was in existence, the CFO did a study on it and said it was completely ineffective. And so I rolled it back and took those funds and invested them in human services and housing for homeless people and a lot of things, behavioral health for schools. And those are lead remediation. Those are things that as a council, we decided were more important than giving out tax break incentives to tech companies that already make a lot of money and don't seem to need them to stay here or be here. Conversely, something like the child tax credit is a great recruitment tool. Come live here in the District of Columbia, come work here in the District of Columbia, have your kids here because we're going to give you a tax credit that you can put right back in your pocket. So that's the way that I think about incentives in our budget, is how do we help people while also using them as economic drivers? How do we make sure we have the best schools in the country, the safest communities in the country, because that's how people make decisions about where they want to live, right? I mean, it is absolutely how people plan for their futures, for their building their families, where they want to buy a home. And that is what makes us attractive to employers. So I think that misses the mark, that particular package, and going to try to reallocate as much as possible to other priorities along with colleagues together.
Thank you, Commissioner Davidson. Last but not least, Commissioner Miller, go for it.
Great. And I'm actually really glad I got to go after the statement, because one of the things I wanted to start off with is saying thank you for recognizing that the programs like SNAP, TANF, Medicaid, even DC Healthcare Alliance, which thank you, Commissioner Achenbach, for helping me push that into our little policy letter. We have a little
Thank
section.
you for that letter. Yes.
Yes. That these are not just things that make us feel good, but they're economic multipliers, that they are investments in the local economy. They create spending directly into our local GDP, and they also create jobs. So I wanted to just quickly pull out one little thing that I had a conversation, so for those who may not be aware, Columbia Heights, Ward 1 has the highest number of adult charter schools. And thinking of how we are investing in our community, creating economic drivers, really creating a workforce that stays in our city, these are amazing. And I recently had a conversation with our adult charters as I was drafting this letter to really sort of get insight into the challenges that they're seeing in our FY26. And I just wanted to pull out one tiny little thing besides the ones that you've already mentioned, which are really important to them. But around the Office of the State Superintendent of Education's cuts to the adult and family education programs, they are looking at about 30% of a hack to their budget, especially on the nonprofit side. The adult charter side, different from their nonprofit side. And that's looking at not only programs, but also caseworkers that are helping to guide those students through the process to get them from point A to point B to success. And so this is a question I'm happy to follow up with you more on. But I was wondering if you'd had a chance to reach out to our adult charters, have conversations with ways that we can really push forward their needs in that budget.
Great question. Thank you. You know what? It is a really important population to me, and I can talk to them like and I'm really glad you're bringing that up here. And you talk about upward economic mobility, adults who are finishing their education and probably parenting and working at the same time, right?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So yes, I am working with
Graduation last week, and whenever I'm with them, they always bend my ear about all of these things. But it is hugely important. And just for those who didn't hear me, tremendous upward economic mobility for people who are adults finishing school, often with jobs and kids that have just been held back by not having that degree or the language proficiency. And they're getting skills in very specific job tracks that we need in our community, like nursing and tech and hospitality. So
Child development.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
For sake of time, we have one more on the speakers list. That's Commissioner Easley, and then we will move on.
Thank you, council member, for coming. I'm actually going to spend my time to ask a question that was posed in our chat.
Oh, sure.
From Kenyon, from a Kenyon Street Co-op.
Sure. Oh, yes. I met with them Monday.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
So they asked about any potential way to fund, they didn't use this term, but DDOT's urban forestry to help with the problems with like the tree plots in the area and maintaining cleanliness and tree plots generally around the area. I've noticed that this is a kind of question I get a lot about cleanliness in Columbia Heights. I know that the Neighborhood Management Authority is one of the methods that we hope to, reinvest and clean up our area. But I did want to just highlight that that was one of the concerns that we heard.
Oh, sure. Probably not DDOT urban forestry because they really just do plant the trees and then they're like, we're out. they have a very focused mission. I will say this, I know this is not wildly popular, and I hate to end on a not wildly popular note. I think we need more people adopting the tree boxes, because certain neighborhoods don't have as much foot traffic as we do, and they don't have as much litter as we do, but most people have adopted the tree nearest to their house at this point, and they keep it trimmed. And it is actually the responsibility of the property owner to keep that area tidy, although again, not a popular thing for me to say. It is the truth. I know it can be burdensome in an area like Columbia Heights, and I've definitely lived on streets that are where it has been burdensome to keep the strip tidy, and the one I'm in right now is no exception. But I think in large part, there need to be community solutions for that type of thing. And I do think NMA could facilitate that, a neighborhood association could facilitate that, an ANC beautification committee could facilitate that. We did have some active residents in 1A for a while that were doing regular cleanups in Columbia Heights. And I know it's hard to keep up with it. Clean teams can only do commercial corridors, and they do beautification of tree boxes in commercial corridors. I know that at least the team that serves Columbia Heights Mount Pleasant does. And they'll send me pictures when they're doing it, you know, mulching, etc. But they also, even as I add staff, it is very hard to keep up with the litter. They'll clean it up and it's already dirty again. So it's helpful to have neighborhood helpers and people who are willing to be part of that and adopt a tree box.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time, for being here, for all the budget advocacy you're doing. I know it's a crazy budget year, so we appreciate you joining us this evening. Well, we're going to, because we have such a busy schedule tonight, we're going to keep moving with our presentations. We do encourage you to reach out directly to the council member and our constituent services, specialist that's here. But yeah, we're only going to have commissioner questions this evening. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, council member. All right, that brings us to our next presentation. We're going to have the Director Tiffany Crow of the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. You'll have 10 minutes, and I do have your presentation, I think.
Yeah.
So I will share that. Give me a moment. Oops.
And I'm going to skim through it really quickly. The lady left, but I was going to cede like 3 minutes of my time to her question if you wanted, Commissioner. We're very fortunate to live in the district where all of you have already, like when the mayor announced her budget, so many people actually look at it. They listen to what is said about it. They do their homework. So I'm not going to belabor too many points in the deck, and we'll get like directly to some of the things that have been said and get to your questions. But as we say, this has been a crazy budget season. Last year was my first budget season as the director of the LCP, and I remember everybody being like, oh, this is a crazy budget season. Don't worry, it's not always like this. And then this year happened, and I was like, oh, so it gets worse, you mean? Like, that's not better, but worse. But I think even if the way that we try to resolve problems is a little bit different, DC values are fairly similar across. Like the things that the council member was talking about, wanting to find funding for and considering important, you're not going to find disagreement in this presentation, maybe in the amounts or the way, but I think that there are really common things that everybody thinks are important, but just the priorities this year have had to shift some. And so that's why it's a beautiful balance that we have. So in 2024, we saw a comeback from COVID. We grew faster than many other states. Violent crime hit lows. There were still issues. We knew that we had issues with the budget. We knew we had issues with crime. We knew we were still solving tough problems. Then with the challenges brought upon us by Congress and sort of the $1 billion gap, it created the necessity to freeze spending in agencies from hiring to programs, and it really sent agencies into an emergency mode in dealing with those things to close the gap for all of us, for all of the programs that really serve our constituents and our neediest residents as well. So in order to close this gap, as you may know, hiring freeze, non-personnel services reduction, so that's like contracts, things that deal with things other than the people, and additionally make cuts in other areas. This, we know about what's happening with the federal government and job losses. So I'm flipping through my presentation much faster than whoever's flipping.
Yeah, just
mine.
tell me where you, what's.
We're
what
on
page you want me to get
slide
to.
4. So
This
I
one?
think your slides are different
Oh.
than mine. So keep going. Next, I'll just tell you next when it's time to go next. So impact of federal job loss. These are projections you keep in mind, right? Because agencies like the CFPB, which was going to lay off thousands of people, those folks are still working. They're still contributing to the tax base. But it's important that we project into the future things that may happen. So the priorities for the budget, next slide, we're creating a balance, making reductions, right sizing costs, making sure that we were spending money where it was necessary. How do we grow and attract businesses? It's not always do we support business or do we support programs like SNAP and public services. It's how do we use the revenue that's brought in by businesses that we need to keep our community vibrant to serve our community in other ways. And so in order to do this, particularly as it relates to business and housing, the mayor's goal is to cut red tape and reduce the barriers to this growth. So our agency, the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, it's not, next slide. They're not all listed here, but we're doing things like streamlining the licensing process, implementing BEST Act, which reduces the licensing fees for all license types to $99. So right now, you want to start an ice cream manufacturing business, it's $5,000. That, and people have asked us, like, is that for all businesses? It's now $99. If you want it, like October 1st, it will be $99. No matter how big your business is, how big or small, that cost is reduced. It also streamlines license categories, and we're working to make sure that it's clearer what's required of businesses when they start in the district. The council member talked about the Rental Act and COPA reform, and I think the mayor had to make some really tough choices here. You know, I'm a lawyer in my previous life, and the pro bono cases I did, some of them were rental, like for tenant advocacy, and those are the slowest cases. Like, it is so slow. The system is so backed up, and so recognizing there's a balance between protecting the vulnerable, but also recognizing that our landlords and housing providers needed support. They need help too in this time. So we focus on sports, entertainment, and tech because those have been growth sectors for the district, and not, this is based on what we've actually seen bring in revenue in the district, and what people are still coming here for outside of government services, consulting, that sort of thing. So leaning into that. So the budget supports those things. And the point that the commissioner made was well taken about that growth that's happening in downtown, or the focus of downtown spreading to other corridors. And the activities of our agency and other agencies in particular are focused on like neighborhood specific growth. So taking examples like Union Market and the resurgence of H Street and those community based things, we are installing folks in each neighborhood to support businesses and these growth agenda items. Investing in our schools, I think Commissioner Miller mentioned that DME was here, or was with her committee, and spoke to the investments in schools and some of the changes. The mayor remains committed. Public safety in schools, you know, will always have strong budgets. People may disagree about the allocation, but those things very rarely get cut in the mayor's budgets. Safety, public safety, again, additional funding for cameras and salaries of 911 and 311 call takers. I don't know if many people are aware, but those folks who work in OUC, often they're the lowest paid government employees, and they have the most important jobs, some would argue. So making sure that those salaries are right sized. Clean DC, so the Clean Corridors Initiative, I thought that the corridors were public, so I won't say them here, but I know that the goal of that is not just dealing with commuter traffic, but it actually is, those are the high visibility corridors. The mayor likes to say, if you work for me in any capacity and you drive along any of these corridors and you see things that are unsightly and you don't text or call someone who can do something about it, then you're missing the point. And so it's less about people who don't live here and the impact of them, but the people who do live here and have to drive and see these corridors. So they're high traffic. So when they come out and tell you the 15 corridors, they're high traffic, high visibility, commercial in a lot of instances. So they say Georgia Avenue because it's a very long corridor with residential, commercial, high potential for business. So those are the thoughts about the clean corridors. DPW was also given additional funding to expand the work that they do. You wouldn't want DPW to work just 9 to 5, and I think that they're working to make those investments. The mayor also gave another $244,000 to DLCP for vending enforcement, and that was intended to increase our staff, but I think we're also looking at whether or not the hours that people work and the way that they support the community can be aided by this funding. So we talked about housing and economic development already, libraries and recreation centers, those communities. So we talk about the sportsplex as part of RFK, but we all know, like, if you have kids and you have one of them in gymnastics, you're leading the district. Like you're really, it's a struggle to find facilities for kids to do activities like that in the district. So the mayor's investing in that. And then healthcare, we know that there's some federal challenges there with Medicaid reimbursements. So we're working to shore up our district government programs. Sorry, you're doing a good job keeping up with me. Investing in human services. And I know that there are definitely cuts here and adjustments that people should really look closely at and advocate for the things that they care for. But the mayor has worked to make sure that we do have a continuum of care for homeless, continue investing in permanent supportive housing, working on homelessness prevention program. Transportation and the environment. I think, these are things like capital bike share, bus priority lanes, the city living, I call it the city living study, but the way that we use bike lanes, there are a lot of thoughts about how our streets and things are structured. So thinking about that as well. Government operations. So this is school support, making sure that our government facilities are in place, and that they are well taken care of. And then Ward 1 specific investments. I should have just skipped all the way down to this one. So in Ward 1, there are at least 12 school stabilizations or modernizations. We have invested in parks, courts, fields, recreation centers, splash pads, and you all have this presentation, so feel free to share it after, because it gets at the specific amounts for each area. And then that is the last slide. So I will pause for questions rather than answer specifically some of the things that the council member said, but we are working together to come up with some solutions. So, okay,
great. We'll go around this way. So, Commissioner Thomas Davis, go first.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Pro, for being here on behalf of the mayor for presentation. That enhancement I'm not seeing. I'll just have it all my questions to your agency. So it's not. You talk about the clean. That's my concern. We talk about. It is a mission. It should be added. It is not. Because it is the culture of the district. So I want to make sure that we are talking about high traffic corridors, Columbia Heights. That is one of those. Yes, do you want me to answer? Specifically, several actions enforcement. Specifically, my district. So I have the Columbia. We are I guess my concern is government obviously have staff that's in the kind of compliance and inspections office. No one comes out when someone calls about the level for a certain hour that's just above the legal decibel limit. So can you talk about what you think you can do? We have two bills that council passed, the Harmonious Living Act and the Amplified Sound Mitigation Act.
Yes.
Neither of those, I believe, will be funded by either Chairman Mendelson or Councilmember Nadeau, but they basically thrust these really kind of onerous requirements on what should be a very easily enforceable regime around sound. Can you talk a bit about what you can do with the lean budget you have to just get people to respond, even if they can't take a legal decibel reading? What can they do just to come out and get someone to maybe quiet down? And then finally,
I haven't had a cookie, not dinner, not water. So can I answer?
Oh yeah, go
So I'd
you
like
can
to
have a cookie.
So related to the corridors, your point about 14th Street and Columbia Heights being a main area is well taken. I think one of the things about the reason why vending sucks up so much air is because when we were going out last year, so 12 months ago, and working to get vendors to come into compliance, even working with the vending zone manager, we also reached out to DPW and our sister agencies to be like, what can we do about the tree boxes? Can we power wash the sidewalks? Can we do? And in general, from both the businesses and our sister agencies, they were like, we've done it. 3 days later, it looks the same. The vendors are there, they are in the area, and it really isn't solving the problem that we need to solve. Yeah. And so that is part of the reason for the approach that we decided to take with the act and with the BSA. The reason that it's in the BSA is because I don't know if you all remember when I first started, you were the first group that I came and like spoke with, the ANC group. And at that time, I wasn't talking about criminalizing vending. Right. I wasn't talking about adding the police back. Right. Our vending act that we drafted 3 months after I started was focused on food trucks because they were catching fire. They were running from the police. They were like really engaging in very dangerous behavior. And so by partnering with the U.S. Park Service and the Park Police, we were able to get that area under control. And so seeing how it actually worked, and it's not perfect, no stretch, but seeing how that worked, it influenced the way that we approached how to deal with sidewalk vending when compliance and education and outreach were not getting the job done. So that is the first part of that. So the corridor is really important. And I actually think once we demonstrate that we have control over the business activity, the vending activity, you will have additional resources at your disposal because we've already, my team has been working with our sister agencies to be like, look, the second that we get the vendors to shift from that corner, move to the plaza, move to Mount Pleasant, we want to bring in everybody to clean it up. We've been talking with the Commission on Arts and Humanities, and then the funding situation made that a challenge, but all of that is related. So then your second point about enforcement. So noise enforcement in the district is actually not straightforward. Right now, there are 3 agencies that could theoretically have noise enforcement. After 10 p.m., it's MPD. The Department of Building deals with noise enforcement as it relates to construction activity at a certain time. And then all of these bills sought to make it a DLCP enforcement activity in real time. And the agency was originally structured, so our investigators worked like 8:15 to 4:30. And so we've adjusted schedules. We've been working with the union, dealing with unfair labor practice questions and things like that. But in the district and in every place in the United States, historically, the First Amendment protects certain types of speech, no matter how loud it is, no matter what time it is, no matter what you're doing. And so that nexus between freedom of speech and noise violations is one where a lot of folks have had trouble getting it right. So if they pass and fund those bills, we would need additional resources. We would need people to be able to adjust their schedules. We would need to pay premium time, things like that. So I hope that answers your question. Whenever someone gives us new responsibility. We just want to make sure that we have the resources we need to do it. You had a third, I don't know.
You touched on it a little bit, but just
Okay.
two other funding. So there's a modest increase of only $21,000 for compliance and inspections. Obviously, you need more, so certainly willing to advocate for more there. Again, only 8 FTEs there. We got to get that up. The final thing, there's a $100,000 reduction to the Small Business Resource Center. You just talked a lot about making sure our small businesses have the, tools and resources they need to really thrive. What would that reduction, what would that take away from your ability to really help our small businesses continue to recover and just find their way through what is a challenging environment for all of us with, higher costs and rents and all these things? Obviously, they need to know that they have a place to,
She manages our Small Business Resource Center, which is really just a business resource center now. We serve small businesses, medium businesses. And that cut, I believe, is a PS cut. It's a personnel. And so what I would say is that in this time when we're all making sacrifices, our team has just, that small team has focused, which is why they're assigned to neighborhoods, why they actually now have like office hours within neighborhoods. So we can try to do more with the staff that we have, more targeted. They're learning to do more transactional work too, so that people don't have to come back to our building or call a licensing specialist. They can actually work with one of our business consultants and get all of it done at once. So that cut, while it hurts, we have made the sacrifice, right? If we have to pick between having an extra body and something else getting done, that makes sense in the mayor's budget, and we're supportive of it. So thank you for asking.
All right, thank you. Next on speakers list, I have Commissioner Morales, then Davidson, and then Sherman. That's all I have. What's that?
You're done with me?
No, we have
Questions.
yes, questions, and then we're done with it. Commissioner Morales, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I'll start by saying this. Director Crow, I don't envy anybody who works for this mayor because now all of you are forced to defend what this says to each ANC commission in this district. So I have two questions for you. The mayor has branded this budget as a Grow DC plan. It's cutting tenant protections like TOPA and ERAP, slashing millions from victim and domestic violence services, phasing out healthcare access for tens of thousands of low-income immigrants, and dismantling our sanctuary city status do anything but deepen inequality and exclusion. At the same time, this budget eliminates the entire community schools program, slashes safe patches by $800,000, zeroes out all teacher retention and wellness supports, and effectively cuts childcare, out of school time, and the pay equity fund, while wiping out early childhood investments in future years. And somehow, there's still room to prioritize taxpayer subsidies for a football stadium at RFK. Can you explain how this budget grows DC and for whom exactly?
I do. As someone who lives less than a mile from RFK and also has lived like in the H Street corridor, that area, for about 20 years, I know that the difference between when there are businesses that are operating in the neighborhood and when there aren't is stark. It is something that for people who, like, going through that litany of cuts that were made, those choices, those hard choices, I actually don't envy the mayor having to make those choices. I don't envy the council having to go through and make choices. I think the cuts to TOPA, you even heard the council member say, adjustments are needed. You cannot have, the reason that people in the district are able to say, like, how can you cut this program? It's essential, is because it existed. And a lot of those programs came to be through this mayor. She's been the mayor for many, many years. And so a lot of the things that people are upset about losing are programs that she helped put in place, because there was a time and there was funding and the choices that had to be made were much less stark. So I think, recently I had a conversation with someone who was like, oh my goodness, how could the mayor cut this funding that's essential for climate change at this time? And why would she do this? And that is very difficult. And I said those are valid points, and you should absolutely make sure that your voice is heard, people like me, to the council, to the mayor. But also, I know we don't have a representative in Congress, but are we also saying those things where the original problem came from? And in any city government, in any federal government, choices about spending have to be made, and people won't agree with all of those choices. But what I would say is that the things that you'll miss are things that are only here in many cases because of the joint work of the mayor and the council. So as we look at what has been cut, there are always balances to be struck. So I'm actually very proud. And there are things that even I, like maybe I would have made a different choice, but I'm very proud of this mayor and thinking through the difficulty, how we came out of COVID, how people in the district have so much more in this city than they do almost anywhere else in the country. In every major city, the services, the healthcare that we were offering to people who were not residents, to people who were new to the country, new to the city, that is unprecedented. You can go to any city, and what we were able to offer here in the District of Columbia, you weren't going to get anywhere else. So criticism, I mean, that's the job, right? Like having opinions about the cuts and believing that one thing is more important than the other. But I also know that where there is no tax revenue, there are no programs. That is a fact.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Commissioner Davidson next.
Hi, Director. Thank you so much for consistently joining us and just representing what you do. I do appreciate it, even though there are challenges and difficulties. I have two questions. The first is that, so, and the same question that I asked the council member, just about how the mayor is planning on bringing investments out of downtown. Commissioner Sherman asked effectively the same question to the mayor at the mayor's budget session for ANCs, and her answer to how she was going to bring investments to Columbia Heights was basically addressing vending, was kind of the entire answer to how economic development was going to happen in Columbia Heights. And so I do see, as Commissioner Thomas Davis noted, that there is a $21,000 increase in specifically vending enforcement in the DLCP budget. But there's also a $6.9 million reduction in the operating budget, and like for licensing services, reductions pretty much across the board. And then I think, if I'm reading correctly, an $18 million reduction in the entire DLCP budget. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that. I can't help but be a little bit concerned that the mayor's, and I mean, I know you don't speak for the mayor, but that the priority is being placed on these businesses that are not yet even in the city. And we're really neglecting our small businesses. And I'm trying to understand how we can expect our small businesses to compete with these businesses that, again, aren't even in the city yet, when we're gutting business licensing, small business resource, or not gutting small business resource services, but cutting some funding. So if you could speak to that, and then would you like the questions all together or one at a time?
Answer that one quickly. So yeah, thank you for the question. And I'm sure I always worry that I'm going to get in trouble here because I just I don't have the attention span to lie, right? So it is difficult. Like, those are big cuts, and they're cuts to personnel, they're cuts to our operating budget, they're cuts to our IT, and then the council is also considering further cuts. So to our agency specifically, to the occupational professional licensing system that allows like our engineers and architects and real estate agents to get licensed, that we worked for a year to really shore up and make sure that it is working properly. Like, we get very few complaints now about those systems because we spent that money wisely and invested in those. We invested in people who come to your meetings, come to the community, who work. And so all of that to say, while there are cuts to our budget, the expectations of us from the mayor have not changed. Right. So the services that you've come to expect from our agency, we are still expected to provide them in the same way. So that makes it not the burden of the small businesses and not the burden of you, but really, as an agency and as the head of this agency, it's my responsibility to figure out how we do the work with what we have. So I think for us, we meet as a team and say, okay, if we know that we are going to have X number of dollars next year compared to what we have this year, one, we are working to everything we can with every dime that we have in FY25, even with the congressional poll, and then saying, okay, how do we prepare ourselves for a much tighter budget in 26? So for us, that's cross-training our staff now. Like people who maybe were like single-threaded before, if their PD allows for it, they're learning 3 different things. And so those are not, this is like kind of in the weeds of like government operations, but we see it. They told us what it was going to be, and now we're preparing for it to make sure that it's not our businesses that suffer. It's not the communities that suffer. And we just work to make sure also that our teams are taken care of, right? That they're not being asked to do things unfairly without compensation, but that we're working smarter in every way we can. So
Thank you for that answer. I think that is often what ends up happening is, budgets are cut and expectations are held. And I realize I realize that the position it puts you in. And I hope that you see us as the ANC as your ally in that, as, not wanting the businesses and the communities to suffer. So, yeah, I want to say that. And I guess my next question I can phrase more as a comment, but also listed in the mayor's budget is just cutting red tape, and a lot of it I do think will sweep and support small businesses as well. But I guess I just want to make an appeal to you as somebody who is well positioned to just ensure that cutting of red tape falls to the lowest level, to the very the smallest businesses, to even our vendors. In doing my research on the budget, I saw there's a line item for 1.5 million to continue operations of the new DC business portal, which is not new. It's been around for 3 years, and I went into it, and there was like 4 main functions in it, and 2 of the functions get you to a 404 page not found. So it's like little things.
Hold on one second. So that's the business.dc.gov, the vending application. Can you send those, like whatever the errors were with that, like is we're that particular application, we want to make sure the vending license is the only one in that application. So we're making a change to that, but send us whatever the issue was with the application. So sorry to interrupt you, but just whatever you.
Totally, I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways, that's just to say that I think IC was like a big advocate for our small businesses. And yeah, just again, appreciate the work that you do and hope you can see us as partners in it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that. Just let us know about the.
Thank you. We have me next, and then Commissioner Easley, and then we're wrapping up. I have sort of a budget and non-budget question, just because you're here as DLCP, so I want to take advantage of that. I think it's last month this commission passed a resolution calling on DLCP and DDOT to explore potentially physically marking approved spaces for vendors. I know that you've so many times to our commission, and one of the biggest challenges we have with vendors is not only the licensing piece, but is also getting them to move to approved spaces. So we don't have that, that hot spot in 14th and Irving where it's so much traffic. It's hard for pedestrians to get by. We still want the vendors to operate, but in approved spaces in an orderly fashion. So can you speak about like whether it's budget year, what can be done, what next budget year? I presume there's not really funding to mark physical spaces, but what is your reaction to that idea, and what can be done to actually incentivize and encourage and enforce vendors to move to approved spaces?
So in terms of marking the sidewalks, we're actually all for it. I think when we started I printed off pictures and like have designs that I wanted to like mark the spots, but it's not really just up to us. This is actually where you guys can be advocates, because there are businesses. So, if I'm Krispy Kreme, do I want that front sidewalk to be painted specifically for like a legal vending spot? Do I want the entire sort of section of the neighborhood to be design driven by vending? So when we were speaking with people, so think about the plaza. So we've been working with DPR to get access to the plaza. We have an MOU with them. Right now, there's like, periodic vendors out there, but even around that area, that back, there are like businesses along that back way. So marking the sidewalk and delineating where the vending is allowed beyond the signs that go up on the poles, that's more than just DLCP and DDOT deciding. That really is a community conversation that really you guys, we'd be open to you doing, like gathering that feedback on our behalf and asking those businesses if they'd support. And we can send you the photos of what we were suggesting. Because I think if it's something that the community wants and DDOT and I can, DDOT and DLCP and our agency can get it done, then we don't oppose it. It's just a matter of whether or not we're representing all of the businesses and interest in the sector.
Can I just a quick follow up? So the concrete barriers, like that was just put up without like talking to the property owner. So why can't you do like a temporary
we talked to DCUSA
marking?
So we came out and we did several walks with DCUSA. We talked to them about the tree boxes. We asked them if they could like help support sturdier borders around the tree boxes. We came out and thought about whether or not we could just add more bike racks, whether we could add what are they called? A statue. And so we had explained to folks that we were probably going to put barriers up. We didn't say when, partially because we didn't want there to be vendors sitting there when we came to install the barricades. And I thought it was very interesting at my hearing. One of the people who testified said, we believe the barriers were put up to try to like discourage people from vending because it's not an allowable vending area, but instead they just set up on top of the things. And so I have to say, that doesn't make it my fault. That means that you saw that this was not a legal vending area, that something physically had been put there to keep you from vending, to clearly delineate, hey, you can anywhere on either of these sidewalks after these barricades, and instead of moving, built your table on it. And so we ultimately decided with DDOT to move them because the legislation was moving forward, not because that's now a legal vending zone, but because we believed that a quick passage through the BSA would allow us to say, hey, look, this act is coming, the law is changing, now's the time, we're here, we send people out to do like licensing on the street now, so that is the reason we moved the barricades, not because our position on those locations changed. They were hideous, we were planning to paint them and do a whole bunch of stuff, but it just really, it wasn't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Basically, go for it.
20 seconds. Thank
Sure.
you for bearing with us.
Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you for having me.
The good news, folks. As co-chair of the Public Safety Committee, very glad to see some of the increases in investment for MPD, for chopper cameras, and for essential services. The bad news is more to the public safety ecosystem, the cameras. When Councilman Nadeau was here talking about the Community Navigators program, and talking about SNAP and TANF, like these are all parts that sort of feed into each other to create a safe environment. And so honestly, I just feel like the mayor's budget doesn't recognize that these are all pillars that create safe communities. I'm glad that there's some reinvestment here on certain elements, but the cuts outweigh some of it. I know it's a tough budget year, but I just have to be real.
The balance isn't there, you think?
And then the last thing I'm just going to note here, I saw here that it says building a new DC jail faster. I'm glad that we're building a new DC jail, but that's not enough. The DC auditor emailed all ANCs earlier this year about the horrendous conditions in the DC. For quite some time how badly prisoners, how bad the food is, how bad the treatment is. It's not enough just to build a new facility that's run by DC, and I'm ever hopeful that DC will run it better than the current folks. But it's about the treatment of the people in there. They need to be treated like human beings, and I hope that sort of shift will happen. But it's not just about. I don't mean to go on your case.
No. I think the reason we don't mind coming here, in spite of sort of like a lot of our introverted nature is because this is an ANC that is like solution oriented, even if we don't agree about the exact thing. So I think your point is well made. It doesn't feel like supremely negative or sort of unbalanced, but building the new jail and focusing on its operations makes perfect sense. So thank you.
All right, that brings us to the end of our questions. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Director Curl, for being here. Thank you to DLCP staff that are here this evening to present on the budget. We appreciate it. You're welcome. All right, we're moving right along. We want to, is the commander still here? Yes. Okay, Kander, thank you for being so patient. We do appreciate it. It's a long meeting and it's hot in here, so thanks everyone. Hopefully that fan's doing its job. But our final presentation is Commander Connors from the 3rd District.
I didn't notice it was hot. Don't
You did,
worry.
yes.
Yeah, I wore the wrong shirt today. I should have worn the short sleeve. So no, I appreciate it. I'll be quick. I know we're running behind. The main reason I wanted to come, obviously, is to introduce myself. This is like week 5 of being the commander of the 3rd District. My last assignment was the 4th District as their inspector. I've worked in a variety of different capacities on the department, narcotics and guns, and to the academy for a while, and 4 different patrol districts, a whole bunch of stuff. So hoping to bring all that kind of experience here to the 3rd District. And obviously I've come, with those first couple of weeks, just learning all the different, priorities and crime hotspots and kind of what's been going on, trying to keep everything moving in the right direction. And I think we've been able to do that so far. And, I know the budget talk can be boring, so crime stats are much more exciting. So I'll go through a couple of them right now, just to kind of highlight some of the good work that's been going on. So just year to date in the 3rd District, we're at 22% violent crime reduction. Our top success is in robberies, which is like 24% reduction. That's really good. 12% overall reduction in crime, so it includes property crime. Just the one area that we've been struggling in was our ADWs, and that's assault with a dangerous weapon. So really that's your gun crime. It could also be other weapons like knives and bricks and stuff like that, but we're really talking about gun crime, right? That's where we kind of saw a spike in the springtime, which is what we've been working on to get it under control. In Columbia Heights, the lower end of Columbia Heights, really what we call PSA 304, the area of Columbia Heights south of Harvard is where we saw the biggest increase. So like 14th and Fairmont in particular was one intersection where we've seen definitely some different gun crimes going on there. But what I wanted to highlight is in the last 30 days, so typically what happens is the warmer months, you see crime go up. And so when we compare crime in this time of year, so like the current 30 days or the prior 30 days, typically you're going to see an increase, and that's natural, right? Now that's kind of built into like what happened the year prior. But actually, we saw a decrease, and actually a 7% decrease in violent crime compared to the 30 days prior. So as weather was heating up, we're actually seeing like reductions in violent crime. And that's a lot of it has to do with the work we're doing in Columbia Heights. Like, it's not a secret that like this particular neighborhood saw that spike in shootings and gun crime. And so this is where we've been focusing a lot of our efforts. And in particular, while I can't get into like individual cases, I can tell you there's been some very key arrests that have been made up here, and some different gun players that have been taken off the street and that are currently being held. And that I attribute a lot of that to. We honed in on some certain people that we knew were committing violent crime. We closed some cases, got some cases being prosecuted right now through the attorney's office, and those individuals getting them off the street has definitely helped. And then we kind of shifted deployment up here. We put an extra visibility unit in Columbia Heights. Our partnership with CSOSA, where we're going to some of these known gun offenders' homes, making sure that they're complying with their probation, trying to request that they get more people on GPS, which is its own hurdle sometimes, because we used to not have to, but now we have to get a judge to sign off on that. And so that's a different challenge. But, little things like that, the focus on this particular neighborhood is, I think, how we've gotten that success in the reduction in violent crime. And some of those crew conflicts that we've been honing in on as well. And then one of the other things, so we have a couple of different crime initiatives. These are extra, some of them are citywide initiatives that come from the chief. Some of them are local initiatives that are coming from me. But when we get those extra resources, this is one of these top areas that we've been focusing on due to that violent crime. So that's kind of my brief overview. Like I said, I will leave it to questions at that point. That's the things I want to highlight. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Let's
go the opposite
Sure.
way we went last time. Commissioner Batia.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that it's a process. I know we've gotten approved for 10 new cameras. I think 2 of them have been installed so far. And I think it's like as the money becomes available, the cameras. So like in this particular fiscal year, we've had 10. I would hope that all 10 are installed by the end of summer. That's the goal. But like every couple of weeks, I'll get a notification like, hey, one just got installed, one just got installed. So that I don't. They didn't give me an actual schedule, but about once every 2 weeks, we're getting one installed. So, yep.
Commissioner, just a reminder to speak into the mic so online folks can hear. Commissioner Easley.
How is your relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office, specifically with the papering rate? Because I know that was a concern the last few years. We straight up heard from officers saying that we arrest them, but there's no follow-up.
Yeah.
Is that trend still there? Do you feel like that trend has changed?
I would say it's all anecdotal. I would have to definitely defer to them on their papering stats. I would say anecdotally, I think we're moving in the right direction as far as like papering rates and getting cases and more importantly, like getting pretrial held, which is a key component, right? Like, so when you lock somebody up for shooting at another person and then they get released 3 days later, like that's not good. So like those type of things are definitely helping a lot. And some of that is still, I know it sounds crazy, but some of that is still us coming out of COVID. Like it was kind of no, I mean, so when I say like when the courts shut down and created a multi-year backlog in cases, we are still coming out of that, right? So there was cases that like you would get charged with a weapon, even if they papered it, right? Which they don't always paper it. So when they paper it though, you might get a trial date 2 years later. So that's 2 years where you're not getting adjudicated. It's 2 years where you're not getting sentenced, not getting put on probation, not getting put on GPS, not getting supervised, all these different things where you're still out in the community. So we're still coming out of that and we're finally starting to have like real turnaround time on cases. So that's really important. And that's helping out a lot. The attorneys, we have a great relationship with the attorneys. Some of it is not, when they no paper a case, some of it is just DC Court of Appeals judges' decisions that have created some hurdles in this city that is not, it's unique to this city, right? It's the DC Court of Appeals. So we have hurdles that other cities don't have based off those rulings, things like that. So it's a little complicated, but simplified, yes, we have a good relationship with the attorney's office. Yeah.
I appreciate the thoroughness.
Yeah.
Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commander Connors, I have a question for you. But before I ask you my question, I kind of just want to go over for the public some of the recent activities or events that MPD has taken since March. To start, MPD reinstated officers convicted of murder and conspiracy, something that this ANC, I might add, spirited by myself and other commissioners condemned. 2, MPD has violated DC's regulations around encampment sweeps. And even assisted an unlawful raid at the U.S. Institute of Peace. So my question to you, and I know you're not the chief, you're certainly not the mayor. Can you assure us here tonight that any officer under your command will follow District of Columbia law, even when they are being told not to by the federal government?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the context of the question, my officers enforce DC law, period, full stop. We are a local enforcement agency. We will continue to focus on local laws. We're not out here to enforce federal law. So
that's the commitment that you won't break any of these laws.
We will follow our policy and the DC law.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas Davis.
Thank you. Commander, thanks for being here, and it's always good to see you. Just a couple of quick questions, really around, we've talked about this before, but I just want to continue to kind of hit at it on the record. It's great that we're seeing stats going in the right direction, but I don't think that lands the way you think it does or has the impact that we want it to without residents actually feeling like they're seeing MPD. They know that you guys are out. You and I have had this conversation. We see officers, but they're largely in their cruisers. Maybe they're kind of in passing, going to get lunch or dinner, but they're not actively walking the beat, engaging with folks. So in terms of, all of what my colleagues shared, getting back to the basics of community policing, we need officers actually out engaging. I know we have also had this conversation, and I had this discussion with your predecessor. Even in this body, I will be honest, there has been a sentiment that we don't want MPD or any armed officials in our communities, which I think personally is just crazy. I'm going to say it. And so you have a lot of residents who have built up this kind of animosity, towards law enforcement. And I think that has contributed to a breakdown in what should be a more effective community policing strategy. So can you talk a little bit about just, again, the stats are going in the right direction, but how can we help you, one, just reconnect law enforcement with residents? How can we maybe get more information? There's a lot of great stats and a lot of things that you said there. We don't have that information to really push out, right? We have a newsletter. We never talk about public safety, and that's one of the primary concerns of all of our constituents. How can we start to help you tell that story? And finally, we've also had this conversation. There's been a lot of turnover at 3rd District.
Yeah.
We need stability so that we can do our jobs.
Yeah.
We have a lot of conversations, and I know, a lot of your predecessors may have kind of shared that information, but I feel like we're pouring into leadership that's just in the next 6 months. Hopefully that's not the case with you, but can you talk a little bit about as well of where you think the chief's thinking is to kind of make sure, because we know the 3rd is one of the more important districts in the, district, do you think you're gonna be around long term so we can make sure that all these numbers that are going in the right direction stay in the right direction?
Well, I certainly hope so. No, my plan is obviously to be here for quite some time. Unlike some of my predecessors, I have a long way to go for retirement. So, which definitely contributes to some of the turnover. And then there's some every now and then just like an unforeseen thing. So the turnover there's not one reason for that. There's a couple different things that happen there, but I have no plans of going anywhere. Hopefully we're all here for the next couple of years. Because I agree, I definitely see some success here, but I also know how, if you kind of take your foot off the gas and lose the momentum that you have, things can go off the rails real fast. And honestly, sometimes things are going to go off the rails sometimes, right? It's how you can quickly, react, kind of like what we saw in Columbia Heights, to get them like back in control as fast as possible. So, no, that's my plan, is to be here. As far as the community policing question, I really do appreciate that. I have not only heard it, we have definitely talked about it, and I've heard it in other meetings and other ANCs. It's definitely a common theme. So that's definitely something internally that I obviously need to prioritize, because that's a common sentiment. And so that's not okay. Like I don't want people to feel that way. I will say, like, you kind of hit something there where there is, not everybody feels that way, right? And the officers, unfortunately, and just in their line of work, the nature of what they do, and sometimes the people they interact with, they get a lot of negativity coming their way. And so some of them might just be a little more apprehensive, all right? And so we all collectively as a group need to work on that. And when people ask me, like, the number one thing they can do as a community member, my top suggestion is to approach the officer, right? Like, some of them might have that apprehension of like, people don't want to talk to me, right? Like, I'm the police. And so I would always, like, my suggestion is, if you see somebody, feel free to engage them, right? The other thing too is, when you are doing different community events, whether it's through your ANC or your civic association or your tenant association, whatever that may be, let me know. I can connect you with our outreach team so we can get officers to these different events, and try to mix it up too, because we have an outreach team. But one thing that I'm looking to do is not just use the same 4 or 5 outreach officers at every single event. Like, we got other players on the bench there, and we got to get them off the bench, right? Because good communication skills and good community interactions is a part of this job. It's a skill set. It's a muscle that's got to be worked on sometimes too, because not everybody's got those good communication skills. So those are things that like I want to do is get other people involved. Just this upcoming Saturday, LaJoy Park has something, and we're using a little bit of outreach and a little bit of patrol. A supervisor is going to go down there. So that's one thing that we're going to do. And then I will say the outreach team does do a lot of work, and they do a weekly food giveaway in Columbia Heights. I know they set up tables at the Metro. So this is definitely an area of focus for them. So they are definitely out there. I think we just need to get a better job of hitting more audiences. So hopefully that.
Thank you. All right, we have Commissioner Davidson.
I think I can email my questions. It's getting late and I want to respect time.
Commissioner Easley, can you email your question as well?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I do want to, do you believe that if we changed our policies regarding sanctuary cities, regarding the not cooperating with federal law enforcement, that we're engaging with immigrant communities, do you think if we changed our policies on that DC law about that, do you think that immigrants in our communities would still work with the community, would be willing to engage with y'all to fight offenses and crime?
So I'll be honest, I don't want to give my personal opinion on that. Like I would just say that our job is to work with every single resident and visitor and everybody in the District of Columbia, like regardless of immigrant status. And that is not something we're going to ask about. It's not something we care about. Our job is public safety. And so, if regardless of somebody's status, if they're a victim of a crime, we need them to come forward and work with us so we can, go after the perpetrator of that crime. So I'll just say that like we are focused on local laws, local enforcement, and we want to work with everybody.
Thank you, Commander Curtis, for being here. We really appreciate it, and look forward to engaging with you in 3D team.
Absolutely.
And I did drop in the chat for everyone. There was some information about the next 3D CAC, which is the community. What does it stand for again? Community Advisory Committee, correct? Yes. Council. The next meeting that's happening. And again, ANC 1A covers 3D and 4D. So the 3D line is below Monroe, essentially, is like a.
Monroe is the dividing
line. So just know that if you're south of Monroe, you're in the 3rd district. If you're north, potentially it's the 4th. Yeah. Look at a map to verify. But thank you again, Commander Curtis, for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, we are wrapping up our presentations. It is 9 o'clock. So we're gonna keep moving through our agenda here. Commissioner Easley, do you want to speak briefly on the reports of committees?
Okay, yes, the reports of the committees, if you have an agenda, look at the back of your agenda. We have meeting recaps of the committees.
Yes, and I'll just note, ANC 1A has 6 committees: Committee on Small Business and Economic Development, meeting on Monday, Committee on Public Safety, meeting on Tuesday, Committee on Education, Youth and Family, meeting on Wednesday, Committee on Housing and Zoning is meeting Thursday, July 3rd. The Permanent Special Committee on Public Life and Neighborhood Planning is meeting Wednesday, June 25th. And the Committee on Transportation meeting will be scheduled. All right, moving into the consent agenda. There are 3 items on the consent agenda that will be voted on in a block. There is no debate or discussion on the consent agenda. However, a commissioner can move to remove something. We have 3 items. That's a resolution calling on DDOT to conduct a comprehensive review of traffic patterns on the 1300 block of Spring Road, sponsored by me, Commissioner Sherman. We have a resolution concerning celebrating Columbia Heights LGBTQ+ history and the cultural legacy of Bob's Inn and Nob Hill, as sponsored by Commissioners Easley and Bhatia, and a settlement agreement concerning Best Stop Dispensary at 3439 14th Street, sponsored by Commissioner Morales. Is there a motion on the floor to accept the consent agenda? Seeing no dissent, we have approved the consent agenda. All 3 items are approved. All right, moving into new business. Each of these will have a debate and discussion and be followed by a vote. We'll allow the commissioner that is sponsoring this to have 5 minutes of presentation followed by that discussion and debate. We'll get started with our first one, resolution concerning preserving DC sanctuary city protections and safeguarding the Columbia Heights community. Commissioner Bhatia, over to you.
Thank you so much. I want to frame tonight's this resolution with 2 recent developments. First, on June 12th, the U.S. House of Representatives passed H.R. 2056, the District of Columbia Federal Immigration Compliance Act, by a vote of 224 to 194. This measure would effectively nullify DC sanctuary city law and force local agencies to cooperate with ICE, even though that's supposed to be our local choice. This isn't a one-off thing. The House also voted on actions to repeal laws allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections and another that prohibits DC police unions from bargaining on officer discipline, clearly signaling Congress's interest in stripping our local autonomy. As ANC commissioners, it's our duty to be the voice of the neighborhood, speaking up for what matters here. Under the DC Home Rule Act, that means advising the mayor, the council, and even federal agencies on policies affecting the district and our Columbia Heights community. As we know and have acknowledged in previous meetings, Columbia Heights is one of the most diverse and immigrant-rich parts of the city, and has one of the highest concentrations of Latino and Spanish-speaking families in the district. The mayor's FY26 budget quietly includes language to repeal sanctuary protections, which we've heard about earlier this evening, letting MPD cooperate with ICE without a warrant. This isn't just a policy shift, it strikes at the core of our neighbors' ability to call 911, to go to school, to seek help without fear. So I'm introducing this resolution that says that DC should stand firm. We're calling on the mayor, the council, and MPD to publicly reaffirm DC sanctuary city status and protect everyone in our community, regardless of immigration status.
All right, thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm hearing multiple seconds. Move into discussion and debate. Is there any discussion or questions about this resolution? Yeah, Commissioner Mel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief in my comments since I'm one of the co-sponsors on this resolution or on this proposed measure. Yeah, I want to just take this opportunity to commend Commissioner Bhatia for taking the lead on this. It's a very important issue for us to address, and I'm glad that we're doing it in this manner. As you have heard from MPD and the mayor's representatives here tonight, they don't really care about the immigrant population in DC. That's very real, and so I'm glad that we're denouncing that and really condemning them for bucking in and really giving in to the federal administration without even having to be asked. So again, hats off to Commissioner Bhatia for this, and I highly encourage my colleagues to support this.
Any other comments or questions? Debate.
I would actually just, yes, to support it, but I would also really ask that we read this, because I think there's a lot of information on what our immigrant community is to us. And we're not just doing this again to feel good. They are not just our neighbors, not just our friends, not just the families my kids go to school with, but they are active participants in making our community successful in all the ways I just mentioned, but also economically. I think we really have to understand that this is a really critical segment of our population, and especially for Columbia Heights, and especially for 1A. And I think it's really important that we make sure that as we are moving through what this administration is putting at us, that we are girding ourselves and really making sure that we are girding our neighbors. This is the one time I will say we're putting a wall around our community and protecting them. And this, I think, really speaks to why we have to do this for more than just performative reasons.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Commissioner Akbar.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bhatia. This is, I think, excellent. And I agree on the statement as a community. I do have a question about the House legislation and how, if they are specific in how they characterize cooperation, because I think there is a way that the word cooperation could be misconstrued, or not cooperating is misconstrued as not respecting each other's authority. But I think what it's getting at is not cooperating in actual actions. So I'm wondering whether that's spelled out and whether there's thinking on that.
So the comments I made about the US House of Representatives is just for context. This resolution is specifically just for the mayor's comments or pieces in the budget. So I don't have a response ready for you on that one.
Okay, no problem. Can I just ask one question? Can you clarify who this is being sent to? Or who it's directed at? Is it the council?
Council, mayor, and
Okay. Great. Seeing no other comments or questions, we will move into, you got right before I said that. Commissioner Davidson, go ahead.
Sorry. I think very briefly, I think also like regardless of how you feel about this is not something that should be a part of a budget at all. And I think that even just for that reason, yeah, I think that this is an appropriate resolution to pass. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, moving into a vote. All in favor of passing the resolution concerning preserving DC sanctuary city protections and safeguarding the Columbia Heights community, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, this motion does pass. Thank you very much, Commissioner Bhatia. Moving on to our next item, we have a voluntary agreement concerning Uptown Beer and Wine at 2701 14th Street Northwest, Unit 2. Commissioner Bhatia, you still have the floor. Go for it.
Great. Very excited. There's interest in a new business in the Columbia Heights neighborhood. Uptown Beer and Wine will be at 2701 14th Street, which is next to Uptown Market, between that and Domino's on 14th Street. They've actively engaged with the ANC to talk about and sign this voluntary agreement, stipulating their hours and how they'll behave in the community. So yeah, looking forward to working with them and welcoming them to the neighborhood.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to adopt this voluntary agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing multiple seconds, move into a discussion. Any questions, comments on this? We did lose 2 commissioners. I think we still have quorum. We do?
Yes.
Okay. Question. Yeah, Commissioner Perry.
Is this one actually voluntary?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to call the question.
All right, we're moving into a vote. All in favor of approving the voluntary agreement with Uptown Beer and Wine, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, this agreement does pass. And Commissioner Easley, can you just note that 2 commissioners are absent? Okay, we are moving right along. We have next a letter of support for a stipulated license for Uptown Beer and Wine at 2701 14th Street Northwest, Unit 2. Commissioner Bhatia, over to you.
So Uptown Beer and Wine has entered into the voluntary agreement, and they've also asked for our support for a stipulated license, which means they can start operating as a business while they wait for their full license to come into effect. Given that they have actively engaged the ANC and are interested in working with us, I thought it would be best to support them so they can start their business and actually keep contributing to the community. So part of the stipulated license is that the ANC has to sign off and give their support. So I'm putting forward a letter in support of a stipulated license.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to adopt the letter of support for a stipulated license. Is there a second on this?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Morales. Any questions, comments, debate?
Mr. Chair, noting no dissent, I'd like to call the question.
Okay, hearing no dissent, we'll move into a vote on this letter of support for a stipulated license. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Mr. Courtney is present.
All right, 1 abstention.
I'm sorry,
All right.
Can I,
This motion does pass.
no, I'm sorry, we were voting on.
The letter of support for a stipulated license. We already moved on from a voluntary agreement. All right, the letter to support stipulated license has been adopted. Thank you, Commissioner Bhatia. All right, next on the agenda is a letter concerning fiscal year 2026 budget feedback and priority gaps of the Council of District of Columbia. I'll just clarify that advisory neighborhood commissions don't carry great weight with the council. So this is more a ratification of this letter that actually has already been transmitted to the council, I believe. This is sponsored by Commissioner Sherman, myself, and Commissioner Miller. I'll hand it over to you for 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you for that introduction. This is a pretty straightforward letter. It's something that why do we not have it linked in here?
Yeah, I guess it's not hyperlink. I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, we will hyperlink it. I will also recommend that folks read this letter as well. It really details a lot of the budgetary priorities that we as a commission have identified. I will say this is by no means exhaustive. It's not even close. I think Commissioner Lehman Morales brought up another list that we could have gone on. I think we could have created a tome, if you will. It could have been endless. I think there were a lot of things in this FY26 budget that we could have pressed for, that we certainly need to better serve our community. This is a starting point. A lot of this came from conversations with our community. A lot of these were letters that we had previously sent to agencies requesting that funding in advance of the mayor's proposed budget. It covers areas of public health, issues of youth, family. We have issues of education. We have issues of small business, economic development, public safety. Public safety, of course. And of course, making sure that we have some enforcement mechanisms for a lot of the things that we're asking for. It has been transmitted to the committees where the budget is currently at, as they listen to communities through the different hearings and begin to submit their portion to the council for its final vote coming in July.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to ratify this letter concerning FY26 budget feedback and priority gaps to the council. Is there a second?
Second.
Multiple seconds. Move into any discussion or debate on this.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So I'm going to speak to this measure to note that glaringly, many constituents will note that my signature is not on this letter. Although I authored several significant portions of this letter, I chose to withhold my signature for a variety of different reasons. Namely, one, this commission adopted a so-called budget task force that colleagues said, well, we didn't do this because, you know, your opposition to this, that, or the other, you know, as a committee chair. This process did not go the way we were told at the time when we adopted that particular resolution it would go. We did not comprehensively hear from constituents on this. We had committee meetings that are sparsely attended, and that is not entirely representative of actual needs of the community. This was a letter that was a statement of both needs, priorities, as well as budget priorities. Specifically, our constituents, my constituents, have noted time and time and time and time again that sidewalk vending is a concern. My colleagues decided that my opinion on that matter, lifting up the concerns of my residents, my constituents, did not matter. That provision was struck. It was said that there's not a budget nexus, but there is. Respectfully, I disagree with the council member. There is. That is a drag on our local economy. It needs to be fixed. The Budget Support Act is a vehicle for a lot of things. Trust me, I know. So that could have been solved to tweak some of the things that are sorely, sorely needed. Finally, there are a significant number of, again, other concerns and priorities that I don't think were properly fleshed out in here. And I really want to focus in on, yes, we are sworn, you know, to represent our constituents. We also take an oath to the entire district. Yes, but our primary focus is Columbia Heights. And I want to emphasize that we keep really deviating into all these other areas that do not centrally lift up the concerns of our residents. So that is why my signature is not on this letter, because I believe in listening to the residents of Columbia Heights, and they have said clearly what their primary concerns are, and those are not reflected in this letter. So it is very disappointing that those were not included. I do want to actually commend all of my colleagues because I do think we all collaboratively try to find some common ground in this, and we did. Again, I contributed to this letter. I want to note that, but I drew the line at several important priorities that were just not included, not cared about, taken out. And quite frankly, I think that's a disservice to the individuals I represent, but I think collectively all the residents of Columbia Heights. So I hope we've all learned a lesson from this particular process, but I think, generally we need to be seriously grounding all of our concerns and recommendations into what our residents actually care about.
All right, thank you. I see Commissioner Davidson has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be brief. Commissioner Thomas Davis, I understand where you're coming from and appreciate the frustration that you have that, parts of what you were advocating for were not included. I don't feel that it's entirely fair to say that we're coming from a place of not wanting to represent you and your constituents. I think that that's going a little bit far. I think we felt, as like I just said with the sanctuary cities resolution, that the budget was not an appropriate vehicle for that legislation. You mentioned that vending is, it does have a nexus to the budget, and yet at the same time, other issues within the city somehow don't have a connection to Columbia Heights. So I'm just like having a hard time it's the two don't really seem to parallel to me. I feel like if you hold one to be true, you have to hold the other to be true. And so that feels like an inconsistency there. I will also say that I think we all very much agree and do believe that hearing from our constituents are of paramount importance. I attended a session which Commissioner Miller put on, in which the deputy representatives from the deputy mayor of education came and spoke to us. We had solicited questions from residents beforehand. Residents attended and we engaged with them and they walked us through the budget. I know that Commissioner Lehman Morales, the budget was on the agenda for the committee, which I know you mentioned, but this was a really tight budget timeline. And I think that we did the best that we could with it. So I don't feel that it's entirely fair to say that we did this without our, the voice of our constituents, because that is quite literally the only thing that we did with the best interest in mind. So I just wanted to put those things out there. I understand the frustration you're coming from, but I also think there's never going to be one thing that every single person is going to be happy with, and I feel really good about the fact that we all, including you, came together and did a really good job putting together something very comprehensive for our residents.
Thank you, Commissioner Davidson. I have Commissioner Miller next.
And I'm happy to go last. I'm happy to let other folks comment.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, before she goes, I wanted to commend Commissioner Miller on doing a fantastic job leading this through multiple versions, pushing us to be substantive and concise. And I think we should be proud of it as a statement of our priorities for the budget for this year with a very short time frame to get this done. I think it's a great statement with some noticeable, some things we may not all have agreed should have been missing, but I think, considering how difficult it is to get consensus around something like this, I think we should be proud of this effort.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Miller, you think? Oh.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to focus on the positives here. First, I want to commend Commissioner Miller for her leadership on this endeavor. One of the things that I'm the proudest about this commission is that we do this annually, and I can't speak for other commissions and how they do things, but I really appreciate that we take the time each year to look through the budget as a commission and write this letter to the council and the mayor saying, like, from the perspective of Columbia Heights and ANC 1A, this is what we think you should be doing in your budget as you go through markups and revisions. So just a real quick couple of things I wanted to highlight that, from my perspective, are really key here. And like Commissioner Achenbach said, the budget is it's not perfect, and we can't fit everything in here. And in my personal opinion, as I've probably made this clear, the mayor's budget is terrible, and I could write endless pages about that in a letter like this. So it's to this point, it says a lot about our commission and our ability to come to consensus on things like this. And so the two things I was going to highlight is her section on strengthening our education ecosystem and nurturing youth and families. As a teacher in the ANC and in the neighborhood, this is all very much in line with educators and other advocates I've been pushing for. And also, as the chair of the Housing and Zoning Committee, I want to also highlight the section on securing affordable, safe, and inclusive housing as a right for all residents. Because as I believe firmly and passionately that housing is a human right, and I think we should be doing everything in our power as a city to ensure that for all residents. And so I really appreciate the focus on this part of the agenda as well. And yeah, just to wrap up my comments, again, kudos to the process. Commissioner Miller was proactive in soliciting my input as the housing chair. She already knows what I think of education because we both talked about this already. So that was kind of already a given. But to the questions on process, I don't think there was anything wrong with the process. I think this is a really good example of commissioners collaborating and working together, and I think it's a model for other commissions to follow.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And again, I just want to iterate that this is by no means exhausted nor inclusive of everything that our community needs. But I do just want to clarify some misconception that none of us came to this information just sitting around waiting for it to fall in our laps. A lot of this started, again, like I said, when we were trying to work with our agencies to really make sure that we were having conversations with their budgets before it got to the mayor. And a lot of these come from being in the schools. I have children. I work with families. I listen to them. The conversation I had with Council Member Nadeau around SNAP, TANF, DC Healthcare Alliance, that was something that this commission fought for years ago to make sure that our families did not have to wait in line starting at 5 o'clock in the morning with their children, who, by the way, they cannot feed their children once they get inside. They weren't allowed to give them bottles or have liquid. So to put that in perspective, none of this just came overnight. We are all very active and very engaged in our communities, directly on the ground, meeting residents where they are. And a lot of this is a reflection of that. I also think it is really important when we talk about things like SNAP TANF, when we talk about Medicaid, when we talk about a lot of these programs that are getting cut on the Hill, the impact that these have on the families in our community is disproportional to what you even can imagine. And I know that because I'm sitting in our adult charter schools having conversations about the devastation that not having access to SNAP and TANF will have on our families, because I know what Medicaid and the loss of it will have on our families. And because we know what happens when our families, because let's say, for folks who don't know, DC Healthcare Alliance is the option for residents who do not have access for Medicaid. And the reason they don't have access is largely because they're undocumented. So these do affect our community. We have 40% Latino, the highest number of Latinos in my SMD. I have child poverty rates at 70%, seniors at 65%. So to say that these programs do not matter to our constituents, I think that's really doing an injustice to the communities that they serve. And I want to be very clear that we have got to keep having conversations about bigger pictures, because if we are just looking forward and just looking down, we are going to miss serving our communities.
Any other comments or questions on this measure? Okay, hearing none, we're moving to a vote. This is a vote to ratify the letter concerning FY26 budget feedback and priority gaps to the Council of the District of Columbia. All in favor of ratifying this letter, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
Please report me as present.
One abstention. Thank you. This motion does pass and the letter has been adopted. All right, we're moving on to a resolution concerning designation of a curbside pickup drop-off zone on Park Road Northwest, sponsored by Commissioner Thomas Davis. Go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief on this, but this is a direct response to a request from a variety of my constituents, as well as a number of retail stakeholders along the 1300 block of Park Road. So I'm bringing forward this resolution, which is a measure aimed at urging the District Department of Transportation to conduct a feasibility study, though, you know, I don't know that we need to actually study the need for this, but to establish a dedicated curbside pickup drop-off zone, commonly known as a PUDO, on the 1300 block of Park Road. This resolution responds directly to a persistent challenge many of us are quite familiar with: congestion, confusion, and conflict along one of the most active stretches of Park Road. This block is home to Park Triangle apartments, as well as the retail there, the Tivoli Square complex, as well as the giant grocery store. It is also adjacent to a lot of other dense residential buildings and essential community services. It sees a high volume of short-term visitors, people picking up groceries, rideshare vehicles that are dropping off passengers, or simply delivery drivers needing just a few minutes to hand off packages. Those few minutes often turn into some hours, but that's a different story. And yet there is no designated space for these kinds of brief but essential stops. The result of this is constant double parking, blocked driveways, and parking garage entrances at Park Triangle, as well as bike lanes that are impeded, though those are not actually on Park Road, but some of that stretch is used as a bike lane, and it also impedes pedestrian traffic. There is growing frustration from businesses whose customers just cannot easily try to access these storefronts. This resolution seeks to solve what is just a proven common sense approach: the creation of a clearly marked, properly regulated pickup drop-off zone in accordance with DDOT's existing guidelines. These zones have already been implemented in many other high-traffic areas of our neighborhood and have done several things, such as reducing illegal and unsafe parking or idling, improving delivery and service efficiencies, as well as supporting our small businesses, as well as enhancing all street level safety for all users, which includes drivers, cyclists, as well as our pedestrians. This is not a large lift. I have heard, again, directly from the Park Triangle retail property owners. They would like this to be a dedicated space where their businesses have the opportunity to thrive, where people can readily and quickly pick up packages, pick up food, and be on their way. I don't want to attack this particular demographic, but I have shared with my colleagues, and I've shared this frustration directly with MPD. The moped drivers, the moped operators have to realize that they are simply motorists who have to follow the same rules and regulations that anybody who actually drives a car has to. They have to understand that where they are parking is a parking space. You cannot have 10 to 15, mopeds just kind of idling on the side of the road, taking up what could be a parking space that would allow, any ride share or delivery driver to kind of quickly get in and out of that space. And so I hope colleagues will support me in this effort because, again,
part of this is establishing this, but the other part is going to be enforcement. And so I hope colleagues would also join me in making sure that the measure we passed earlier this year goes a long way towards also making sure that once this is there, it's actually enforced by DDOT as well as DPW's parking enforcement. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I move the measure and I urge my colleagues' support.
All right, great. There's a motion on the floor to adopt the resolution concerning designation of a curbside pickup drop-off zone on Park Road Northwest. Is there a second on this? Second by Commissioner Achenbach. Moving to discussion and questions. I can go first. I support this wholeheartedly. I walk by this area all the time, and there's a lot of double parking, a lot of cars parked in the lane, dropping off groceries from Giant. On the other side, there are a lot of buildup of mopeds. And I do think just generally this area needs to be studied for maybe an area that allows for temporary pickup and drop off, but it is not designated like that right now. This is a really, narrow street with a lot going on. And I think asking DDOT to study this and look into it makes sense. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments are not to the merits of the proposed measure themselves, more so to the process behind how we got here. Previous commissioners have spoken earlier this evening about the imperative nature of following process and community input. And so I find it curious that residents around this bus stop reached out to the commission and said, we don't know.
Commissioner Morales, sorry to interrupt you, but we're talking about the pickup drop-off zone on Park Road.
The agenda is a little confusing. My apologies. I'll refer back to this later.
Yeah, we're on the resolution to designate a curbside pickup drop-off zone on the 1300 block of Park Road. Are there any other comments or questions? Get there. All right, seeing no comments or questions further on this, we will move into a vote. All in favor of adopting the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions. All right, this resolution does pass to designate a curbside pickup drop-off zone on Park Road. Moving on to a resolution concerning the request to relocate a bus stop on the 3200 block of 11th Street Northwest by WMATA and DDOT, as sponsored by Commissioner Thomas Davis. You'll have another 5 minutes to speak on this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to keep my remarks brief and save time for what I'm sure will be questions and comments from my colleagues. However, we discussed this particular measure at the committee of the whole, and I made clear at that time what my intentions would be this evening. So I'm going to try to keep my remarks rather brief and save time for questions, but I'm going to quickly try to speak to concerns of my constituents, and I would love to hear from my colleagues who I share this particular corridor with, which is my 1A10 colleague, Commissioner Easley, as well as my 1AL7 colleague, Commissioner Achenbach. As many of my colleagues know, this is obviously an important corridor that is in a period of transition. 11th Street is, growing business-wise, but there's also a lot of infrastructure that is changing along this particular corridor. There's a lot of housing that has actually been developed there in recent months. This is a very important corridor, but it's also one that we have to think long-term about. There are long-term infrastructure needs that we have not contemplated on this corridor in some time. And so because my particular district encompasses most of the most important pieces of, all the businesses who are impacted by this particular stretch, but also a lot of the changes that are happening there, this is why I have brought this forward. This particular line serves what will soon be the D44 and the D74. This is a part of WMATA's Better Bus redesign. this is an opportunity to address this very issue of what is this going to actually look like in light of a lot of other things that are happening here. So this is about the current placement of a southbound bus stop at the 3200 block of 11th Street. I want to be clear. DDOT has recently put out permanent streetery guidelines. And I know I have a lot of constituents who feel very strongly about streeteries. But guess what? They are there as much as I want to do something about them as the committee who has jurisdiction over streeteries. As long as a business pays the fees that are required to have a streetery, they can have one. And so I want us to be clear about that. We are not going to tell a business that they can or cannot have a streetery. We do have a current streetery that is directly in front of a bus stop, which is directly contrary to the new permanent guidelines. That is part of why I am taking this action, to ensure that the business that is currently there is not adversely impacted by this. Those guidelines say you need a 15 feet buffer zone. Well, guess what? Even if that particular streetery comes under compliance with the new guidelines, it still would not be 15 feet away. So that is part of what this is saying, how do we protect our businesses who have over the last 4 years, relied on this? Finally, I want to speak to the issue about engagement. As I told my colleagues, I am one of those individuals who will always listen to any number, who either support or oppose any measure. And even if I don't like it, and I hear the vast majority say they don't want something, I'm going to go that way because I believe I have to represent my constituents no matter how I feel. So my intent for this measure was to always introduce it, post it, and give everyone the opportunity to weigh in on it. And so I want to finally speak to all of the concerns that have been shared. I hear you. I've had several of my own constituents write to me in no uncertain terms and say, we do not want this unless we have a process. And so that process will happen. DDOT has their own process for when they undertake these kinds of changes. WMATA has their own public comment process before they make these kinds of changes. But I also want to be clear, there is a protected bike lane project that is already in progress and is happening. DDOT explicitly said back in 2023 that their intent was to always look at bus stops on this particular corridor. So what we're asking for here is not anything that would not already be happening. It's simply saying, what do we do to make sure that what is currently there doesn't have to change? We can make sure that the businesses can, survive as best as possible. We can make sure that the bike lane project goes forward, but we make sure that wherever we put this stop, it does serve those it needs to actually serve, because being where it currently is, it is not. I promise you, I walk past it every single day. The bus cannot stop at the curb. It just can't.
Commissioner, your time is up.
Thank you.
Commissioner, are you moving this motion or are you moving to table it?
I'm going to move it for the purpose of discussion, and I want to give colleagues an opportunity to reflect concerns they have heard, and I will.
Yes, thank you.
I have a motion I will make after that.
So there's a motion on the floor to adopt a resolution requesting to relocate a bus stop, the 3200 block of 11th Street Northwest by WMATA and DDOT. Is there a second on this? Just to move into discussion?
Yeah, okay. For purpose of this, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Easley seconded.
I have to,
And we'll move into discussion and debate. Commissioner Easley, you can go first.
know people want to go home. I just want to quickly say one thing. I've already been inundated with emails ever since this was put on our site, and it's 3-1 against this. I will say that everyone involved, including the person who opposed, had the person who supported had a pretty thoughtful sort of conversation about it. So we will consider this in the next month. But yeah, if people who feel strongly about this particular bus stop on 11th Street, I urge you to email us in the lead up to our next ANC meeting, so we can deliberate about this effectively.
Did you say me? Sorry, the mic broke up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas Davis, I am to be completely honest, a bit at a loss with this. For as much as you know that you and I have had disagreements on things, I have held you in a very high regard in the sense that I know that if there's anything that you do above and beyond, it is engage with your residents and with your community. It is something that you have made a point of time and time and time again, that you hold us honest to, and that I have honestly, I mean, I came to you and I looked to you for advice as a new commissioner of how even I should be doing that. And so to hear you come and say that, look, I'm gonna, I want to, listen to the community members, listen to what they're saying, but DDOT has this process, Ramada has this process. And for this, I mean, I know I haven't been a commissioner for, 4 months. I have never heard the community being so vocal about something in my entire time here. And to not be receptive to that and to not even question that or to be hesitant towards what to listen to that is giving me significant pause and making me have a hard time trusting what you mean when you say that you are engaging your community and what that has looked like. I'm also not understanding the reluctance and the resistance to hold a hearing or a public forum on this and why that hasn't happened. I think I'm just like truly at a loss with all of this. I'm in this position solely as in service and of my residents, and the fact that so many residents have come forward so vocally about this to me is truly all that I need to hear. I don't know if we're voting on this tonight, but I know very clearly how I would vote. So I just want you to know that this is the way that this has all gone down has been very shocking to me and is something that I've taken very seriously. And it's just been a lot.
Davidson. Next, I have Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to piggyback of what Commissioner Davidson said. My first concern with this is that I don't see or understand the strategy behind how this is being undertaken. I don't understand why this was put on the agenda only then to be pulled from underneath us and the residents. We've heard from many residents who said we had no idea this was going to be even debated today. We had to move things around. There are people here today to hear about this and then to just tell them, hey, actually come back next month. That doesn't sit right with me. And I don't see the logic behind it as well. So I think for the sake of the people who did come here and who are interested in this issue and are impacted by this issue, we owe it to them to discuss it tonight and take it to a vote. There's no point in just kicking the can down the road an extra month. And then secondly, to the point on community engagement, Commissioner Thomas Davis brought up that the establishment right in front of this bus stop would benefit from this. However, we got a little email from the owner of that business saying we do not want this bus stop to go away. And Commissioner Miller and I even had a conversation with that business owner in person about this. So I'm just confused as to, going back to Commissioner Davis's point, like where this sort of selective engagement is coming from, because we're here supposedly this is 3-1 against, as Commissioner Easley said, but somehow we're all uplifting a certain section of that's supposedly in support of this. And I'm just calling to question the validity of those comments now, given the information that I've been given by some of these impacted residents themselves and what I'm hearing from the commissioner representing them.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Yeah, I'll add you to the list.
Are there any other speakers?
Yes, Commissioner Miller is next.
And I'm happy to go last if anybody else would like to. Okay. Yeah, I want to echo what the other commissioners have said. I also find it a little disrespectful to our community that we put something on our agenda. And let's also point out that the only emails we received were those individuals who even knew we had a meeting, who even knew to look on our agenda, who happened to have access to the internet and happened to speak English. And we've already started to hear from this. I have been through several of these bus relocations in my time as a commissioner and as a member of this community. And I promise you, they never go well. And what I'm worried about is that you are asking this commission, representing, again, 2,000 residents each, to say to WMATA that our residents approve the relocation of a bus stop without any engagement with those resolutions, and then relying on WMATA to go out and do what ostensibly is our job, which is to physically go to our residents, have conversations, investigate how they feel, and really take on a bottom-up community-led approach. And then when we find out, which we're already starting to see, that this is not what residents want, then we go back to WMATA and say, oh, and by the way, that resolution where we told you we wanted to relocate the bus stop, haha, just kidding. We actually don't want to relocate it. But we're putting the burden on our residents to fight WMATA. We're putting the burden on residents who do not speak English, who have their resources, their energy, their capacity already tapped with just living. We're asking them to take on WMATA to save access to their transportation. I feel like that's fundamentally opposed to what we as a hyper-local representative body should be doing. This whole process seems reversed. If you individually want to go to WMATA and have them explore and then come to us as a commission to talk to your community, but asking us as a commission to represent what is not representative of our community. This is a top-down decision. It is not community inspired. And to be honest, I'd like to just vote on this because I know how I'm going to vote now in June. I know how I'm going to vote in July when there's nobody around. You're also talking about schools being out. This bus stop serves 3 schools in just our ANC. So you pick July to start having engagement? I'm ready to vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm next on the speaker's list, and then you're going. I want to just call out that it's 9:47. We have less than 15 minutes until we have to be out of the room. We still have 2 resolutions here, so I'm just acknowledging that for the body. I just want to speak really quickly. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I don't know why this was moved as an emergency measure. That gives me some pause. I do think there needs to be more community engagement. All of that said, I want to acknowledge and agree with Commissioner Thomas Davis that there is a risk that one of our businesses on 11th Street, Johnny's, may lose their streetery because this bus stop is too close to the existing streetery. I'm not saying the bus stop should move. I agree with many residents that maybe the bus stop shouldn't, but maybe it should be studied. Maybe we should take a fresh look at it. Maybe we should say, should it move? Could it move over here? No, never mind, it shouldn't. Could it move over here? Neighbors don't want that. And then it stays right where it is. But we should look into it because with the new streetery guidelines, it's potentially going to require that streetery to go. So maybe Commissioner Thomas Davis, I would encourage you to soften the language on this, take a few more months and introduce it in the fall, talk to more neighbors on it. I just feel like it was rushed, and that's why people feel weird about it. But I'm urging commissioners, there are some valid concerns in here, and this is not necessarily saying we're moving it. This is saying WMATA and DDOT, let's go ask some questions and investigate it. So I will not be voting for this today, but I understand the drive behind it, and it's worthwhile to investigate it again in the future.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to
Commissioner Thomas Davis,
I'm going to speak to this, and I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible. One, I want to speak to my colleague, Commissioner Davidson's attack on my character in that I am not listening to what residents are saying. I hear residents. I know what they want and what they need, and bringing this measure forward in the way that I am is intentional. So no, I'm not ignoring or being callous about concerns. I introduced this intentionally this way because guess what? It got a conversation started that wouldn't otherwise have been started. Our committee listservs are very limited. Any other particular, like, I don't know if all of my colleagues go door to door in their districts, but I do. I dropped off letters regarding the Park Road Stabilization Center project to every home on Park Road. Anything that is happening in my district, I go to my residents. So I want to categorically say, let me disabuse anybody of the notion that I am not listening to anybody, because all of my constituents will tell you, they see me on the blocks every day, pounding the pavement, talking to them.
Commissioner Davis, I'm going to ask you to take down the temperature, please.
I am trying to emphasize a point that I brought this forward in the way that I did so that we could start this conversation and have that level of engagement that my 1A05 colleague says is not happening. This is the forum to bring forward something this large, say, let's start the conversation and let's put it off. I said we would actually move to postpone this for two reasons. We could actually open up a public comment period, have the widest possible impact. I am copied on the same emails all of you have gotten. I know the concerns. I received those concerns and I am ready to incorporate them. I am happy to hold a public hearing jointly with our Committee on Transportation to hear concerns. I am not ignoring anybody. I intentionally brought this forward in this way because it is the widest possible effort to then start that conversation. I also want to be clear, whether we do anything with this measure or not, public transportation infrastructure on this corridor is going to change. There is a protected bike lane project that is likely going to eliminate an entire traffic lane. It's going to significantly probably narrow the north-south connection there. That's going to have an impact on the corridor no matter what. The bus stop may have to move. I also want to be clear, DDOT's intent, they said this in March 2023, their intent was to always look at this bus stop. So this is simply saying in the process of doing that, they are in that phase right now. It's saying as you are doing that right now, let's make sure that we examine where this bus stop is put, that it serves everyone's needs, and that we protect business interests that may otherwise be irreparably harmed. So again, I heard what my colleagues said at our June 4th Committee of the Whole meeting. This measure was not haphazardly brought forward. We had a discussion. We all agreed that we would postpone this until our July 16th meeting. And if we need to postpone it again, that is up to us. But again, everybody was brought into this conversation, and I'm happy to keep having it.
All right, Commissioner Davis, for the sake of time, let me keep moving. I have Commissioner Easley as our last speaker here.
Commissioner Thomas Davis, you're doing the right thing in the wrong way. I think is what I'm hearing from colleagues. So here's what I would suggest to do. I think temperatures, to be honest with you, I think temperatures are a little too high for us to. I would not want to vote on this in this kind of environment right now. So I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to refer this issue to the Transportation Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I reserve the right to make a motion to postpone this measure. So
I don't want to postpone it. I think what we need to do is this is a tense issue, obviously. I don't think it's enough for us to postpone it to next month. I think we need cooler heads than us right now. And I think we need to have the dedicated members of our Transportation Committee to take a review of this and give us more feedback beyond just what we're getting from our emails.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
I can move forward. Hold on. I can make a motion for this. Can I not?
You can make a motion, yes.
Okay, then I'm going to make the motion. I move to bring this resolution before the Transportation Committee, to refer it to the Transportation Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I want to speak to that motion.
There's a motion on the floor. You'll be able to speak to it in a second. We first need to see if there's a second. Is there a second on a motion to refer this resolution to the Transportation Committee?
Can I make a friendly amendment to that motion?
Before we get an amendment, we got to get a second. So there's a second from Commissioner Perry. So now we're discussing whether we're going to refer this to the committee. Commissioner Thomas Davis is going to go first, then Commissioner Miller.
Again, I want to note, as I said before, as great as all of our committees are, and I chair one myself, our committees are limited forms. Even if you referred this to that committee, there is only so many people on that committee, and I do want to know, there's only one individual on that committee from 1A06. So is that entirely representative of my constituents? Probably not. I don't know if every other SMD is actually represented on there. So I just want to be clear. Part of why I did this was to have the broadest possible exposure, to not say, let's try to silo this into a committee that may or may not get the turnout or the input that it needs. Secondly, I want to note, this has a variety of different implications. And so if you're referring this to a committee, it needs to be referred to multiple committees. And I want to be clear, I don't want to get caught up in a scenario where a committee of constituents, and again, constituents' voices matter, but our committees are intended to advise us about matters, not take a commission. This is authored by a commission. A committee of residents is not authorized to basically mark up a measure that is sponsored by a sitting commissioner. So I want to be clear about that. Any input they would provide, they can provide. But I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah. Commissioner Miller, you're up.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to belabor this anymore, but if we are going to move it to the Committee on Transportation, if we're going to put it to a vote, I'd like to make a friendly amendment that we give our new chair at least a month to get her sea legs and to put together a strategic agenda. I also agree with Commissioner Thomas Davis. This should not be the only stop for this. I am happy to take it in on my committee. I won't be able to do it until August at the very earliest. So if we want to have a more holistic approach to how we are discussing this and how we want to present this to WMATA in a productive way, I would say July and August to move those movies forward.
So I want to,
this project is going to be done by then. I just want to be clear. The bike lane project is happening. That particular design phase ends. If we're not going to do anything on this to then try to solve this problem by the end of next month, I will just withdraw this measure and let the chips fall where they may. But this was about having a robust conversation. If that is not going to happen, and we're talking about maybe solving this in the fall, we're going to miss that window to actually have a robust conversation, because I want to bet you a lot of residents have not actually even weighed in on the on the actual bike lane project.
What's the rush here, man?
This is about saying that design phase is happening.
Take down the temperature, Commissioner Thomas Davis.
Once that happens, we are done. They are probably not going to move this.
You know what?
Mr. Chairman, there's still a question on the motion on the floor.
Yes, there's still a motion on the floor. Commissioner Easley has the okay, so I'm reiterating the motion. I want to clarify, we are on recess in August. No committees are really meeting in August unless they want to. But we as a commission are on recess in August. So the motion on the floor is to refer this resolution to the Committee on Transportation, not at its next meeting, but the one following that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Easley.
Is there further discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, may I ask Commissioner Easley I'm just going to make a friendly amendment to ask you to.
All right.
No, I would rather withdraw this measure, and I will take this up myself, addressing the concerns I principally have. And if others want to weigh in, great. But I'm saying DDOT is moving on this bike lane project. And I would rather go hard on it to make sure all of the concerns are really lifted up rather than kick the can to a committee, put the onus on them, and then we're just kind of waiting. To my point, to your point, the urgency is that this project is happening. So I will withdraw the measure if the body is okay with that. I will still ask the commission if they want. We can send out a, form to solicit public comment, but I don't want to kick this and then things get missed. This project is going to complete the design phase probably by the end of August. So I'm happy to work with my colleagues to figure out what this ends up really looking like, but I'll just withdraw the measure if my colleague is fine with that.
Then this is over.
Okay, so the measure is being withdrawn. Commissioner Davidson, I do see your hand up, but it seems like you put it down. So, Mr. Thomas Davis, reiterating, this measure has been withdrawn.
Yes.
Okay, so nothing's being tabled, nothing's being moved to committee. This measure has been withdrawn. We are at 10 o'clock and we do have two more things we need to get done, so we're going to try to go fast here. We finally, we have a resolution concerning the appointment of a chairperson for the Committee on Transportation, and we have an emergency measure regarding the Red Rocks protest. We're first going to do the resolution for the Committee on Transportation. As everyone knows, we had a Commissioner, Jake Knoll, that had to resign. He was the chair of the Transportation Committee. There's a vacancy there now. Members of that committee were asked who was interested, and we have someone who is interested, Daniela Kelly, who stayed the entire meeting here in person. If you want to stand up and just wave and say hello. This resolution officially designates her as the chair of the Transportation Committee, effective immediately. Therefore, I move this motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Hearing multiple seconds, is there any discussion or debate?
I'd like to call the question.
Okay, moving into a vote on this, all in favor of appointing Daniela Kelly as chairperson of the Committee on Transportation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, this measure does pass. Congratulations. Thank you, Daniela. All right, we're on the last order of business. This is a emergency resolution that was moved regarding, I don't even know if it's in here. Regarding a protest of Red Rocks at, I don't know the exact address, 11th and Park, regarding their liquor license renewal, as sponsored by Commissioner Thomas Davis. Commissioner Thomas Davis, given the time, I'm going to shorten you to 2 minutes. I'm so sorry, but go ahead.
No, this is a very straightforward measure. As I communicated at our June 4th special meeting when I protested the alcohol license renewal of El Chucho, one of my aims as the S&D commissioner of 1A06 is to try to bring some semblance of uniformity, not in how individual establishments operate, but necessarily basic expectations that I think we can all try to coalesce around. In the process of engaging with this particular business, just as I did El Chucho, reached out. We received notice of their license renewal on May 16, 2025. I immediately, on May 21st, 2025, reached out to the business, tried to engage, actually proffered what I thought was a very bare bones, straightforward, voluntary agreement. And in the subsequent weeks that passed, literally up until yesterday, I have called, text, emailed, actually gone in person to the establishment to just say, let's have a conversation. And even if we arrive at a point where we decide to not, have any, agreement in place, we have had the conversation. We often don't really interact with these businesses aside from just, going in as a neighbor and just, having a meal or having a drink. This is the only real time to have that kind of really kind of annual, biannual conversation. And so the applicant has just not been willing to come to the table. And so this is again about saying, if you don't want to have that basic conversation, this is the recourse that will hopefully bring you to the table. So I urge my colleagues to support this measure And again, this is not about being intentionally arbitrary. It's just about trying to have a conversation that can move us from point A to point B.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to protest the liquor license renewal of Red Rocks Gourmet Pizza LLC at 1036 Park Road Northwest. Is there a second? I'll second it. Second. Any discussion or debate? Commissioner Morales?
Yeah, I just had a quick question to clarification. So does Red Rocks not have a settlement agreement currently in place?
No, they do not.
That can't be right because Commissioner Miller and I are looking at a settlement agreement with that establishment right now on our computers. So I'd like to some clarification on how that could be the case if they don't have one currently.
Do they have one that?
Can I clarify? Sorry, just in case,
Go ahead,
for
Commissioner
folks
Miller.
who don't know the process, when we reach a settlement agreement with a business, that settlement agreement stays in place
Yes.
with the business. This is one that was put in place when Red Rocks
Yes.
was first formed. We have not had any issues with that business. It has not terminated the settlement agreement. We have not terminated the settlement agreement. So right now, there is a settlement agreement, at least according to ABCA or ABRA as it was back when we did it, in place. Talk noise, peace, all of the things we include in our every settlement agreement now, including addressing their summer garden, including addressing the neighbors. They put in noise protection. So
I want to be clear. Things have changed since this business opened. This business has been in operation for quite some time. So I may have missed that they actually still had an active agreement in place. This business has changed hands a few times. I take the point, but I want to be clear. Just like El Chucho, there is a new residential building there that calls for a new conversation. Nevertheless, most of these agreements are decades old. And so having a conversation to say, are you still meeting those obligations? Has something changed? So I just want to be clear. I put forward a new agreement that I would hope to have a conversation about. And again, I think all of us would agree a basic conversation is warranted.
Can I speak quickly on it and then we're going to go? I'll come back, Commissioner Easley. I know the owner very well. He's the owner of the Artemis all the way up 14th Street near Spring Road. And he recently bought Red Rocks about a year ago. I know him well. I don't see why he shouldn't be engaging with Commissioner Thomas Davis as the commissioner of the area. We've gone into new agreements with the Coop, even though the Coop had an existing agreement. I entered into a new agreement with Queen's English, even though they had an existing agreement. I wish it had gone better, to be very honest with you, Commissioner Thomas Davis. I'm not sure what's going on in your communication. And I don't know why we have to use like the stick all the time when it's working to not use the stick in many other instances. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I support the protest if that means that you can have a good conversation. If they're not engaging, they're not engaging. Like that's the end of it. I'm sorry. Like business owners should engage with the community and the ANC, period. And if this is what we have to do to get them to be at the table, then so be it. I just ask that you are consider your approach with the business owners as well to make sure that they are not feeling like they're cornered. That's all I'd say. Commissioner Achenbach.
I agree with that sentiment. I think it seems to me we need to take a little more time, even if it means another year because of the timing of it. Let's, yeah. It doesn't seem like there's a problem to solve right now with this particular business. I agree with the principle, but I think at this point, I don't see a reason to act on this.
Commissioner Easley.
I mean, now that Commissioner Thomas Davis, I would urge you to postpone this because now I know there's a new settlement agreement and I feel like the facts are a little muddled now. But if you bring it to a vote, I'll support it. I wish this didn't had not been done as an emergency measure because I just feel like I haven't had enough time to. And I understand the rationale, but you know what? I called a question.
Mr. Chairman.
I did not get it. I clarified Dieters, but I haven't had a chance to
I
speak.
apologize.
No.
Okay, I heard Commissioner Thomas Davis first and then Commissioner Miller, and then we're closing it for a vote. Go ahead. You got a minute.
I was just gonna. Oh, are you talking to me or Commissioner? I was just gonna say very quickly. Again, I appreciate that there is an agreement already in place. I appreciate that fact. Again, circumstances have changed. And again, the DC Court of Appeals has ruled that every license renewal is a new factual case. So we're taking into account things that have changed. However, this is my district, but I take note of when we're doing these kinds of agreements, this is a commission-wide policy.
Yeah.
And so I'm mindful of, if you all think this agreement suffices in the way that it is, I won't make a fuss. However, I just want to be cognizant of, there is a new building there. Haven't had any complaints, but it's sparsely occupied. The building next to another establishment that has happened after the fact, also not yet fully occupied. So we don't quite know the impacts of this. So I will withdraw this measure. And note that, again, this is the commission saying that we are fine with a policy of a business not coming to us, but
No one said that.
but if we have an agreement already in place that, again, we think suffices.
Commissioner, if you want the opinion of the commission, we vote on it.
But I will note, the reason I move this now is because the protest deadline is June 20th.
June 20th, that's correct.
Do you want?
Okay, are you proceeding with this motion or are you withdrawing it?
Again, because
Just answer the question.
this is a commission-wide policy of, if we're going to go with existing
There's no policy we're
agreements.
setting here. Are you making a motion or are you withdrawing it?
I'm gonna make the motion.
Okay,
You can-
the motion stands.
Okay, then
Commissioner Miller, you have the last comment and we're voting.
Well, I think actually another commissioner, but I just want to say, I agree with you. It would be great to update it. I don't want to be using a protest to act as a stick every time we cannot get a business to answer a phone. These people are busy. We are now asking them to come to a hearing, mediation. Work it out with them, Commissioner Thomas Davis. Get a new and updated settlement agreement, bring it to the commission. But I personally, we have one in place. It speaks a lot to the settlement agreements we put in place with all of our other businesses. You should read it. But I cannot protesting when we already have something in place. I think you can work with them, use your charm, get them to update that, then bring it to the commission and we can vote on that.
The protest deadline is June 20th. I don't know how many times to say
You don't have to have
that.
a hearing to get a new settlement agreement.
You don't, but this is the only opportunity to really have that conversation.
Commissioners, we're out of time.
We are moving
into
the trees here.
All right, everyone, I want you to take a deep breath. We have made it to the end of our meeting, but we have a vote in front of us. We are voting on a resolution of protest of the Red Rocks liquor license to ABCA. Okay? All in favor of approving the resolution of the protest, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, I heard 2 yeses, 2 abstentions. I believe this
Mr.
motion.
Chairman, I'd like to move for a roll call vote.
All right, Commissioner Easley, can you do a roll call?
That's my bad for doing this.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it.
I can do it. It's fine.
You can do
Commissioner
it.
Achenbach?
No.
No. Commissioner Bhatia? No. Commissioner Davidson?
Abstain.
Abstain. Commissioner Easley? Abstain. Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Miller?
No.
No. Commissioner Sherman?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Morales?
No.
No. 2 abstentions.
Abstentions
Commissioner
don't
Thomas
count towards
Davis.
the vote.
Yes.
3 abstentions.
Yes.
3 yeses, 2 abstains. I don't know. We need some math.
It's not that simple. It's not that hard, guys. Abstentions don't count towards the vote total.
Yes, exactly. So there's more yeses.
There's more yeses than no's. I think it passed.
Oh, no, there are more no's.
There's more no's. Yeah, but that's the
Can we
past
do another
quorum.
proper roll call?
No, we have the numbers.
I thought I had it.
1, 2,
You packed up too soon.
3, 4 no's.
Amateur hour, and it's me. I'm
That's
the
4 no's.
amateur.
Yeah, okay. The abstentions remove the number needed for For the quorum, 4 noes, the noes have it. This motion does not pass. We have not adopted the protest. With that brings us to the end of our agenda for this evening. We made it.
Yay.
We are adjourning this meeting officially. The next meeting of ANC 1A is on July 16th at 7 p.m. Right back here. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.